I stood at the head of the council hall in my castle, wearing my lord's wolf fur cloak, and looked over everyone gathered before me. The north wind howled outside, but inside the fires kept us warm. On my left stood Lane and his elite golden rank Imperial Knights, the backbone of my territory's defense. On my right were 12 new faces, the administrative team brought from Snow Wolf territory. They looked nervous but eager. I started with the 3 key appointments my father, Count Amon, had handpicked for me. First was Soren Iron Anvil, a sturdy, weathered veteran who'd managed several border fortresses. I named him Chief Administrative Officer, putting the entire daily operation of the territory on his shoulders. He accepted without hesitation. Next was Harvey Silverfeather, young, sharp, wearing gold-rimmed glasses and carrying himself like a scholar. I made him Chief Political Officer, responsible for all laws, records, census, disputes, and official documents. He already had ideas forming behind those calm eyes. Last was Edwin Coppercoins, a plump, smiling man who looked like a friendly merchant but was known as the Iron Abacus back home. I appointed him Chief Financial Officer, in charge of taxes, treasury, budgets, military pay, and every coin flowing through the territory. His smile vanished and turned to iron seriousness when he swore not a single gold dragon would be wasted. The remaining 9 I assigned as assistants and local managers for villages, mines, and workshops, letting the 3 chiefs distribute them based on their strengths. I walked beneath the great snow wolf emblem and spoke plainly. This land was harsh, surrounded by monsters, and everything needed building from nothing. We weren't here for comfort. We were here to carve out a home for our people and raise the Snow Wolf banner over the northern frontier. They all swore to follow me. I could feel their determination was real. I dismissed the 9 to their posts with Lane's knights as escorts and ordered preliminary reports by sunrise. Then I sat with my 3 chiefs and gave each their first tasks. Soren was to take over settling the 5,000 new serfs that Martin was processing, assigning them to farmland, construction, roads, and mines, with proper schedules, rotations, and discipline rules. Harvey was to draft a temporary legal code for the territory within 3 days, covering security, land rights, trade, disputes, and ownership of monster loot and mining rights, something clear and enforceable. Edwin was to inventory every last coin and supply in the storehouse, catalog the goods my 3rd brother Fletcher's merchant company had shipped in, and build a 6-month budget. I needed to know exactly how long our money would last and how to stretch it further. All 3 left with fire in their eyes, already calculating and planning as they walked out. I stood alone under the wolf emblem, watching snow fall outside the window, and felt real confidence for the first time. This team my father chose and my mother quietly supported was already running like a well-built machine. My territory finally had experienced hands on the wheel. We were no longer drifting. We were ready to cut through the waves. Deep winter hit hard. The north wind screamed across the frozen wasteland, bringing heavy snow that could freeze steel and seal rivers solid. But even in this brutal cold, life was pushing through. After nearly 2 months of day and night work by thousands of serfs and the Riser garrison soldiers, the expansion of Kanglan town was finally complete. The old wooden fence walls were gone. In their place stood thick earthen walls 5 meters high, packed with frozen soil, crushed stone, and reinforced with heavy logs. Walkways ran along the top for patrols, and watchtowers rose at the 4 corners. Nothing compared to Snow Wolf City, but enough to hold off small monster raids and savage weather. Inside, the messy shanty camps had been cleared away. Proper streets now spread outward from my castle like spokes of a wheel. Rows of sturdy log cabins lined them, roofed with thick mudgrass layers and waterproof felt. Simple but sealed tight against the cold, each one fitted with a small fireplace, sending white smoke curling into the gray sky. A small square had been built at the center of town, with a public granary, a basic workshop district, and a government hall that Harvey had overseen, serving as both administrative office and courthouse. Rough around the edges, but functional. Near the north gate, proper military barracks had gone up for the Flying Tiger Knights and the Riser garrison. They finally had real shelter and a training ground. A solid armory stood nearby, stocked with well-maintained weapons and armor. The whole town radiated order and quiet strength even through the blizzard. Around the town, 10 new villages had taken root like tough lichen on frozen ground, each placed with strategic purpose that Soren and I had planned together. 3 villages sat in a triangle around the Tier 3 cold iron ore veins. Built into the hillsides, their walls reinforced with mining waste and frozen earth, they housed miners and their families. Ore sorting yards and mine roads were already in place. This was the source of future high-grade equipment materials. For more villages clustered near the Tier 2 and Tier 1 refined iron deposits. Slightly larger, these had attracted some craftsmen alongside the miners. Small smelting furnaces and forges were running inside them, handling basic or processing. The seed of our territory's industry. All mining villages had simple stone and timber walls, watchtowers, and small riser garrison squads. Roads to these sites had been built first to keep or transport flowing. Soren was already organizing winter work inside the mines, reinforcing tunnels and preparing for full-scale extraction once spring arrived. 2 farming villages, the largest of all, spread across a relatively flat stretch of fertile black soil to the southeast, near an underground river branch that hadn't fully frozen. Houses were spaced wide with plenty of open land reserved for future growth. The settlers here were mostly serfs and experienced farmhands. Huge grain stores and livestock sheds sat at each village's core, covered in thick felt. Martin was directing the villagers to clear stones from the fields and dig irrigation channels through the winter, getting everything ready for spring planting. This would become our breadbasket and population base. Despite the brutal weather, every settlement buzzed with activity. Blacksmiths hammered away in Kangland town, repairing gear and forging farm tools. Harvey and his clerks worked through the nights, organizing census records and drafting laws. Edwin's abacus clattered nonstop as he tracked every scrap of supplies coming and going. In the mining villages, experienced foremen led crews deep into the shafts for reinforcement work while craftsmen experimented with smelting techniques. In the farming villages, serfs chanted work songs as they pried frozen stones from the earth and carved out the beginnings of irrigation ditches. Women gathered in heated workshops, sewing winter clothing, weaving mats, and preparing feed for the livestock. I stood on the watchtower of my expanded castle, looking out over everything. Snow piled thick on my wolf fur cloak, but my gaze burned hot. The town walls were modest, but already sheltering my people. 10 villages, rough as they were, had been driven like iron stakes into the land's resource veins and fertile ground. 5,000 serfs were exhausted, yes, but I could see it in their eyes now. A sense of belonging, a flicker of hope for the future. The veins of steel are laid, I muttered, my breath vanishing in the wind. The roots of the granary are set. Winter is for gathering strength. When the spring thunder cracks and the rivers thaw, that's when Kangland territory truly takes flight. I turned and headed down the tower, my steps firm. This winter was savage, but it couldn't freeze the fire burning across this land. We had taken our first real step. Then I heard it. Heavy, steady footsteps rising through the wind. Each one rang with a metallic rhythm against the stone, and I could feel the vibrations through the floor. Snowflakes seemed to melt and scatter before whoever was climbing toward me, pushed aside by some invisible force. The steps stopped behind me. My lord, a voice, deep, powerful, like a hammer striking fine steel. It carried absolute respect and a strength far beyond what I remembered. I smiled before I even turned around. I had been expecting this. The presence at my back felt like an unsheathed legendary blade, razor sharp, soaked in the iron-blooded aura of 100 battles, yet perfectly contained within heavy armor. Even the howling wind at the top of the tower seemed to grow tame and pull back near him. I turned slowly and looked at the figure standing there, solid as cast iron. So I said, "You're back." The lane standing before me was not the same man who had left 2 months ago. He still wore imperial armored cavalry plate, but the color had changed, from dark gold to something deeper, almost black, as if the metal could swallow light itself. The lines of the armor were smoother, more perfect, and a faint living glow rippled across its surface. That was the sign of battle aura, fused completely with the steel. The imperial eagle crests and runes carved into the plates seemed alive now, pulsing with energy that made the soul tremble. His visor was up, showing a young face carved hard by wind and battle. His eyes were sharp as a hawk's, deep as a frozen lake, and somewhere behind those pupils golden battle aura burned like quiet magma. He stood straight as a spear, and just by standing still he created an invisible barrier around himself. The biting wind and falling snow simply couldn't reach him. My lord, his voice cracked with emotion. Before I could speak, he dropped to one knee with thunderous force. The stone cracked in a web of fractures under his armored kneecap. He slammed his fist against the dark plate over his heart, and the impact rang out like a cathedral bell, so loud it drowned out the blizzard for a moment. Thank you for remaking me, my lord. For granting me the name of Imperial Elite Armored Cavalryman. His voice erupted like a volcano, full of roaring loyalty and white-hot gratitude. He looked up at me the way a true believer looks at a god, absolute devotion burning in his eyes. Every fiber of him said, "This body, this life, is your blade. Point me at your enemies." I stepped forward, smiling, and placed my hand on his armored shoulder. Beneath the cold steel, I could feel the surging power and searing loyalty underneath. "This glory is yours, Lane. You earned it with blood and courage, fighting through the blizzards of the north and the deadly peaks of the Cross Mountains. You killed your way to this rank with your own hands. You deserve it." I looked him over, completely reborn. Imperial Elite Armored Cavalryman. Good. This abyss-heavy armor, this power, that's what fits the name Lane Astartes. That's what fits the sharpest blade of my Kanglan territory. This was Lane Astartes. 2 months of life-and-death combat in the Cross Mountains had pushed him past his limits into the realm of Earth Knight, forging the supreme honor of Imperial Elite Armored Cavalry. He had returned like a war eagle reborn from fire. He swore to crush anyone who stood in my way, spitting the word, insects, like a frozen verdict. In his eyes, any enemy of mine was already dust. I placed my hand on his shoulder again. "Stand up, Lane." He rose in one clean motion, armor ringing, like a steel fortress rising from the ground. I looked past him, towards something far beyond this moment. My voice was steady but carried a weight that echoed across the wind-battered tower. "Imperial Elite Armored Cavalryman," I said slowly. "To others, that's the peak they spend their whole lives reaching. A final glory most will never touch." I locked eyes with him, speaking each word like a hammer blow to his soul. "But for you, Lane Astartes, this is only the beginning." I raised my voice and spread my hand wide, as if grasping the entire frozen north. "I don't need a single elite rider. What I need is an Imperial Elite Armored Knight Order. A steel flood made of the most loyal, most powerful, most fearless Earth Knights. An army that can tear the sky and crush mountains. One that makes the entire north tremble. An invincible force." I fixed my gaze on him with absolute trust and the highest expectation. "And you, Lane Astartes, will be the first commander of that order. Today's rank is your medal. But the title of Knight Order Commander, that is the crown waiting for you. You deserve more than this. This frozen land and everything beyond it will witness your rise to the top." Lane's body shook. His pupils tightened to points. The word, commander, hit him like molten iron poured into the core of his ambition and loyalty. He crashed to one knee again, faster, harder, more devout than before. The sound of his armor striking stone rang out like the most solemn oath ever spoken. "I, Lane Astartes, swear on my life and honor. I will follow you, my lord. I will forge that invincible Imperial Elite Armored Knight Order. I will conquer new lands for you. Until my last breath." For a moment, even the blizzard seemed to stop, as if the wind itself had paused to hear that vow. In the meeting hall of Kanglan Castle, we gathered around the polished wooden table under the cold glow of magic lamps. The fireplace was burning strong, but the mood was tense. On my left sat Soren, Harvey, and Edwin with stacks of documents. On my right, Lane in his dark heavy armor and Martin Thorne from the garrison, both sitting straight with sharp eyes. "Winter's almost over," I said. "Spring planting is coming. Whether Kanglan territory rises or falls depends on what we decide now. Give me your reports." Harvey stood first, pushing up his glasses, holding a parchment sheet. Clear and organized as always. "On population, counting the serfs my father helped supply and those my brother Fletcher purchased, we now had 40,000 mouths to feed. On farmland, during the frozen winter months, they had managed to clear 200,000 mu of plantable land. Come spring, the harvest would be just enough to feed our people, but only just. No surplus to sell. To have grain left over for trade, we'd need to clear another 200,000 mu next year. On settlements, Kanglan Town's expansion was done and could hold 30,000, though Harvey recommended keeping it around 20,000 for easier management and defense. The 10 surrounding villages, 3 near the cold iron mines, 5 near the refined iron mines, 2 on the black soil farming plains, were planned for 50,000 total, but currently held only about 1,000 each. He suggested sending all future arrivals to the villages first, keeping people spread out and close to their work. I nodded. People are the foundation, land is the lifeline. Good work, Harvey. I'll talk to my third brother Fletcher about bringing in more settlers. Keep a close eye on spring planting and new land clearing. Edwin jumped up next, his usual cheerful face tight and serious, small eyes glinting, words firing like a rapid crossbow. Treasury, 100,000 gold coins. That was it. Industry, both cold iron and refined iron mines were producing steadily. The craftsmen sent from home had arrived, and the forges were running at capacity. Daily output was 10 sets of cold iron armor, 50 sets of Tier 2 refined iron armor, and 100 sets of Tier 1 refined iron armor. For weapons, about 50 shield and sword sets and over 100 sets of javelins, bows, and spears. Trade. Fletcher had helped set up the Kanglan Trading Company framework. It would start running routes next month. But right now, the only real product we had to sell was our armor. Income versus expenses. Armor sales could bring in tens of thousands of gold per month, depending on orders. But running a territory this size, wages, construction, military upkeep, settler costs, purchasing supplies, the spending was enormous. After everything, the best we could hope for was about 10,000 gold coins saved per month. Only 10,000 a month, I frowned. Thinking about the future costs of building Lane's Night Order, that was nothing. Edwin was quick to explain. That 10,000 was only possible because Fletcher, as family, was selling us slaves and grain at cost, maybe even at a loss. Without him, our books would be deep in the red. The armor brought money in, but the territory burned through it like water. I exhaled. I understand, Edwin. Keep working on both earning and saving. The trading company is just starting. Armor opens the door, but we need to find more things to sell. Soren stood next, steady and solid. He reported that with the territory still in its founding stage, he hadn't tried to create overly detailed regulations. Instead, he had focused on the most critical matters: public order, census management, land distribution, basic trade rules, dispute resolution, and most importantly, who owned monster loot and how mining rights were assigned. He handed me a thick, wax-sealed parchment scroll. This is the draft of the Kanglan Territory Provisional Frontier Regulations. Kept simple and enforceable, meant as groundwork for more detailed laws later. I took the scroll without opening it. Well done, Soren. During the founding period, rules need to be enforceable, not numerous. We'll trial this first and refine it once we're more established. Then Martin Thorne shot to his feet, back straight, voice booming. The Riser garrison now numbered 500 soldiers, all trained to Tier 3 Imperial Skilled Infantry. 50 of them had risen higher, 30 to Tier 4 Imperial Veteran Infantry, and 20 to Imperial Twin-Blade Spearmen. Pride showed in his voice. Then his expression darkened. But my lord, Kanglan territory is no safe backwater. This is a bleeding-edge frontier. Our land is far larger than a normal baron's domain. 10 villages spread wide, 1 town in the middle. Frost wolves prowl the northern wastes. Goblin tribes hide in the Cross Mountains to the west. 500 men cannot cover this. His voice grew strained. The patrol lines were too long. They couldn't rotate guards fast enough. Protecting one village meant leaving another exposed. Escorting trade caravans stretched them thin. Clearing scattered monsters ran them ragged. Sooner or later, something bad would happen. I'm requesting immediate expansion of the garrison, Martin said firmly. I tapped my fingers on the table. He was right, and it was something that had been weighing on me. We had built the skeleton of a territory, people, towns, industry, but the armor protecting all of it was paper thin, like guarding a long, dangerous border with a handful of broken fence posts. How many do you think we need, Martin? And how would you deploy them? He took a deep breath. He'd clearly been thinking about this for a long time. In the interior, a baron can get by with 500 or 600 guards and live comfortably. But Kanglan is the kingdom's northern outpost. We face frost wolves from the north and goblins from the west. The territory is huge and the defense line stretches far. Even with the most conservative layered defense and keypoint strategy, we need a ratio of 1 soldier per 20 civilians. So I'm proposing, expand to 2,000 men. 2,000? The moment Martin finished, Edwin shot up like he'd been stung, face flushed red, voice sharp enough to cut glass. My lord. No. Commander Martin wants to bleed us dry. He pointed at Martin with a trembling hand and started firing numbers like a machine. Equipment alone. Even making it ourselves, the cheapest black iron chainmail set with weapons cost at least 10 gold coins per soldier. 2,000 sets meant 20,000 gold, not counting shields, spares, and repairs. And our entire treasury only held 100,000. Wages and food, 1 gold coin per soldier per month at minimum. 2,000 men meant 2,000 gold a month, 24,000 a year. Where would that come from? And that was just the obvious costs. Training losses, death and injury payments, new barracks, supply transport. Every single one was a money pit. With our current savings of barely 10,000 gold per month, how were we supposed to fill a hole that size? Edwin turned to me, practically begging. Just maintaining the current 500 garrison troops, and the Flying Tiger Knights already had the purse strings pulled tight. Expanding to 2,000 would mean by next summer we wouldn't just fail to save money, we'd be lucky not to drown in debt. The territory would collapse under its own weight. His words hit like a bucket of ice water. Every number was cold and real. Martin's face went iron dark. His fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. He couldn't argue with the figures, but the invisible threats lurking beyond our borders stabbed at him like needles. He refused to back down. Soldiers or money? The contradictions smashed together like two blades, throwing sparks. The hall went dead quiet. Just the crackle of the fireplace and the howling wind outside. Every pair of eyes landed heavy on me, waiting for my decision. My tapping fingers slowed to a stop. I looked at Martin, grim-faced, worried about security. Then at Edwin, red-faced, worried about bankruptcy. The firelight flickered in my eyes as the war raged inside my head. I let out a long breath, pushing all the weight and hesitation out of my chest. My finger came down on the table one final time like a guillotine blade cutting through doubt. Martin, Edwin, both snapped to attention instantly. I looked at Martin and gave the order, sharp and final. Expand immediately. 2,000 men. Martin's whole body shook. Disbelief and wild joy exploded in his eyes. He never expected me to approve this with our finances so tight. He dropped to one knee and slammed his fist against his chest with a heavy thud. I accept your order. I swear to defend every inch of Kanglan territory with my life. My lord. Edwin's face went white. His voice cracked, almost breaking into tears. Please reconsider. The money. I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. My eyes locked onto him like a hawk's, and my voice dropped low but carried the force of a volcano. Money can be earned back. If the territory falls, everything is gone. My voice thundered through the hall. I, Ron Windsor, can tolerate many things. Slow development, I can bear it. Tight living, I can bear it. People talking behind my back, I can bear it. I stood and leaned forward on the table, pressing an invisible weight down on the entire room. My gaze swept over everyone before locking back onto Edwin, hammering each word home. But there is one thing, absolutely, no room for compromise. And that is our military strength. Our security. What is money? I said, my voice rising. Money is for forging blades. For forging armor. For arming our most loyal soldiers. Those blades, that armor, those soldiers, they carve our path to survival. They hold the ground beneath our feet. They take wealth and living space from our enemies. I pointed toward the snow-covered northern wastes and the western mountains beyond the window. If we don't spend our gold on the blade's edge, if we don't turn coins into weapons, what then? Do we sit on our pile of money and wait for the monsters out there to come kick down our door, take everything, and use our own wealth to grow stronger and come back for more? Not a chance. Every single gold coin of mine goes where it protects this home and expands our reach. The expansion happens. Now. Edwin was completely stunned. He opened his mouth, looked at the fire burning in my eyes, and swallowed every word. His shoulders sagged, his face filled with bitter acceptance. He knew my mind was made up, and as harsh as it sounded, this was the brutal truth of surviving on the frontier. He let out a long, silent sigh. Yes, I understand. The hall fell quiet. My words still echoed off the walls. Martin stayed on one knee, chest heaving, eyes blazing with loyalty and devotion. Lane watched me from behind his cold metal visor, and I caught the faintest hint of an approving smile at the corner of his mouth. I sat back down, swept my gaze across the room, and let my voice settle back to steady calm. Edwin, I know it's hard. We'll figure out the money together. Cut where we can. Push the armor trade harder, get the trading company running as fast as possible. And give me a detailed budget. Exactly how much the expansion costs, how big the gap is, and how we close it. We solve this together. Then I turned to Martin, still kneeling. I'm giving you your 2,000. Every last one. But I want elite soldiers, not a rabble. Train them hard. Equip them fully. Hold every defense line. If you expand and still let something slip through, I'm holding you responsible. Yes, my lord. Martin's voice rang out like struck steel. The decision was made. The expansion that would shape Kanglan territory's future was settled under my hand, and there was no turning back. My gaze settled on Lane Astartes, sitting in his dark abyss armor like a silent mountain. Lane, how is the Flying Tiger Knight Order doing? He shot to his feet like a war machine switching on, fist crashing against his chest plate with a ringing clang. The Flying Tiger Knight Order has completed its transformation, my lord. All 150 warriors had advanced to silver rank. Tier 4 Imperial Heavy Riders, every single one. 9 of the most talented had already broken through to gold rank, earning the title of Tier 5 Imperial Armored Cavalry. Another 10 Heavy Riders were on the very edge of that same breakthrough. And the original 10 Imperial Armored Cavalrymen who had followed me from the start, after surviving the Cross Mountains, were all knocking on the door of the next level. One step away from becoming Imperial Elite Armored Cavalry, just like Lane himself. I couldn't hold back my smile. In just a few months, we had gone from 10 gold rank knights at the core to a full company of silvers, 9 new golds, 9 at the peak of gold, and 1 earth knight leading them all. That growth was terrifying. It came from the system's power, yes, but also from the blood and sweat these men had poured into every battle. Their loyalty to me had sunk bone deep, a near-fanatical devotion I could feel radiating off them. Lane Astartes, my voice turned sharp, commanding. My lord. Effective immediately, the Flying Tiger Knight Order splits into 3 forces. I laid out the plan. 3 squads, each led by one of the Gold Peak cavalrymen closest to breakthrough. Their mission, a sweeping offensive along the northern wastelands and the western edge of the Cross Mountains. A net-style sweep to wipe out every monster nest, roaming beast pack, and bandit group that could threaten our territory. Not one left standing. Stamp your iron hooves across every inch of ground where threats might hide. Let your blades announce the new order of this frozen land, and all prisoners, goblins, kobolds, any creatures capable of digging or labor, were to be rounded up and marched to the 8 mining villages. They would work the mines for Kanglan territory until they had nothing left to give. Lane's voice erupted like a volcano. He slammed his fist against his dark armor with a thundering boom. I will crush every thread along the borders with the force of a storm. For you, my lord, for Kanglan, I will plow a field of peace. The logic was clear in his cold, glinting eyes. This operation served 4 purposes at once. Convert border threats into free mining labor. Keep the Knight Order battle sharp, and push the near-breakthrough riders over the edge through real combat. Harvest monster hides, bones, crystals, and organs as valuable trade goods for the trading company. And by burning the war into enemy territory, take massive pressure off Martin's garrison as it expanded along the long defense lines. The Flying Tiger Knight Order, my sharpest blade, was about to be drawn again. Days later, in the dead woods along the northern border, the first strike fell. Winter wind screamed through bare branches that clawed at a lead-gray sky. The air smelled of frozen earth, rotting leaves, and just a trace of blood. Then, a shriek ripped through the silence. More screams followed. Inhuman, panicked howls. Over 100 green-skinned, hunched goblins scattered like ants hit with boiling water, dropping their bone clubs and stone axes, trampling each other in a desperate stampede into the deep woods. Their muddy yellow eyes were full of raw, primal terror. They recognized that dark, gleaming armor, the Deathbringers from the frozen north. But they were far too slow. The thunder of hooves shattered the frozen ground from 3 directions as 3 steel torrents closed the trap. Each column was led by a gold-rank armored cavalryman radiating crushing battle aura, followed by dozens of heavy riders in layered iron plate, eyes cold as the steel they wore. "Clean them out," the lead gold rank said through his visor, voice flat as grinding ice. "Anyone who resists or tries to hide, no mercy." The riders didn't even draw their swords. Against goblins this week, their 12-foot cavalry lances were more than enough. Spear points punched through backs and necks with wet, precise thuds. Small green bodies were skewered and flung into trees, bones snapping on impact. Heavy hooves crushed anything that fell beneath them. One tiny goblin collapsed in a puddle of its own filth, screaming surrender in broken human speech, hands raised high. A rider looked down without expression and drove his lance clean through it. It was over in moments. The clearing was carpeted with dozens of green corpses, dark blood soaking into the frozen dirt. The last goblin tried to scramble up a tree. A thrown lance pinned it through the trunk like a specimen on a board. Silence returned. Just the heavy breathing of warhorses and the soft clink of armor. The gold rank leader walked his horse slowly through the carnage. His cold gaze passed over the dead, then settled on a few dozen surviving goblins huddled in corners, shaking, too terrified to even run. "Prisoners," he said, pointing at them without a flicker of emotion. "Tie them up. Stack the bodies at the north tree line as a warning." Ropes went around goblin necks like livestock leads. Corpses were dragged and piled into a small mound of death at the forest's edge. The steel flood moved on, dragging its prisoners and its message deeper into the woods. Cold, methodical, unstoppable. Behind them, only the blood-soaked clearing remained, and that silent hill of bodies announcing the new law of the border. The bitter winter finally loosened its grip. The air still bit cold and the deep ground was hard as iron, but sunlight began to creep back, and tiny green shoots pushed through the dead grass. Spring was coming. Kanglan territory woke up like a giant stretching after a long sleep, bursting with energy on every front. Out on the wide black soil plains, thousands of serfs chanted work songs and swung heavy iron plows, turning the frozen earth inch by inch to reveal rich dark soil underneath. Harvey moved through the fields with his clerks, marking plots, registering everything, keeping the spring planting running smooth. Smoke rose from the twin farming villages, and cold-hardy livestock called out from their pens. The 8 mining villages rang day and night with the sound of hammers. Goblin and kobold prisoners hauled ore from the deep shafts under the crack of overseers' whips, numb but efficient. New smelting workshops blazed with furnace fire, molten iron pouring red-hot, forging hammers shaking the walls. Refined iron and cold iron ingots flowed out steadily, some going to arm the military, the rest stamped with the Kanglan Trading Company brand and stacked for shipment south. The Flying Tiger Night Order's 3 strike forces kept sweeping the northern wastes and western mountain edges like tireless rakes. Lane commanded from the center, cold and precise, running his endless, cleaner operation. Every day brought new monster nests destroyed and new prisoners, goblins, gnolls, even lone trolls, chained together and herded like cattle to the nearest mining village. Their sweat and blood were becoming the bones and sinew of my territory. Martin was running himself ragged. 2,000 new recruits had been gathered and were training hard in the expanded barracks. Edwin gritted his teeth and squeezed every last coin from our tight treasury to forge basic chainmail and weapons for them. The workshop district in Kanglan Town roared around the clock. Everything was moving according to the blueprint I had drawn up during winter. The territory ran like a precise war machine, every gear spinning fast, building up the power to break through. Then, on one of those hopeful spring days, a squad of battered riders crashed through it all like a dark shadow. They were covered in dust and frost scratches, carrying the banner of Duke Raven, a raven spreading its wings in a blizzard. They blew past every checkpoint without stopping, riding at near-charge speed straight to the gates of Kanglan Castle. Their hoofbeats hammered the stone road with an urgency that could only come from the highest authority in the north. The lead messenger was brought into my council hall. He pulled off his mud-caked helmet, revealing the weathered face of an old northern veteran, lined with exhaustion and grim weight. The moment he spoke, Every conversation about planting and building in the room froze solid. Lord Ron, he dropped to one knee, voice hoarse but cutting clear. By order of Duke Raven, emergency military intelligence, he drew a deep breath, and his words drove into the room like ice spikes. The Orc Kingdom. Southern Grand Chieftain, Duke Rank, Skullcrusher Grom Hellroar has gathered 37 chieftains ranging from Baron to Count level at his capital, Bloodhowl Fortress. 300,000. 300,000 Orc warriors. At least 50,000 of them are well-equipped, blood-crazed elite warbands. Frost Wolf Cavalry and Kodo Beast Wardrum units are marching with them. Their vanguard is already sweeping through the border buffer zone like a swarm of locusts. Their target, Raven Fortress. The Duke believes the Orc main force will launch a full-scale attack during the busiest period of spring planting, when our northern troops and farmers are stretched thin. They intend to smash through the fortress in one push and raid our rich heartland. A full northern mobilization order has been issued. All nobles, regardless of rank, are to enter a state of war immediately. Conscription by law, for holders of the Baron title, minimum levy, 100 Black Iron rank professional soldiers, 10 Bronze rank professional officers, and 1 Silver rank professional commander. Deadline, 15 days. All conscripted forces must arrive at the designated assembly area at Raven Fortress. Anyone who disobeys, military tribunal. 300,000 orcs? Attacking during spring planting. I shot up from my seat, every trace of hope draining from my face. I stared hard at the messenger. This is confirmed? Absolutely, my lord. The intelligence was brought back by Duke Raven's Raven Eye agents at the cost of their lives, and cross-verified by multiple scout teams on the front line. The Orc war banners stretch like a forest, their drums shake the earth. The scale is unprecedented. This is no bluff. My heart sank like a stone. This wasn't a drill or a border skirmish. This was the opening of a full-scale national war. I sat back down slowly, fingers tapping the cold oak table without thinking. Everything I had just been planning. The 200,000 mu of new farmland, the mines hitting there. Stride, the trading company routes, the night orders sweeping operations, the 2,000 recruits still in training. All of it was suddenly under a dark war cloud, hanging by a thread. Spring planting. What happens to it if the main force leaves? Who guards the new villages? Will the mining prisoners revolt? Will trade routes get cut? And those 2,000 half-trained recruits, do I send them into a meat grinder? Questions flooded my head like tangled rope. But I knew there was no time to hesitate. I took a deep breath, forced my thoughts into order, and let my eyes go sharp again. I looked at the kneeling messenger. Understood. Tell the Duke that Baron Ron Windsor of Kangland territory obeys the order. Within 15 days, I will personally lead our best troops to Raven Fortress. I tossed him a heavy gold coin. Good work. Buy yourself a drink on the road to shake off the cold. He took it, his frozen expression softening just slightly. He bowed deep and left with long, urgent strides. The heavy oak door closed. The hall went dead silent. Firelight flickered across my grim face and the shocked expressions of Soren, Harvey, Edwin, Martin, and Lane. Edwin was the first to explode. His round face went white, half terrified, half furious. Is that orc chieftain insane? Spring planting. This is spring planting. Don't they need to grow food too? If this war drags on, seeds rot in the ground before they sprout. What are they after? I sat with my fists clenched white, voice low as a storm held back. Exactly. Spring planting. I turned to Soren. You've studied the kingdom's history cover to cover. Has any sane duke ever launched a 300,000-man war of annihilation during planting season? Soren shook his head slowly, face hard as iron. Never. In 1,000 years of kingdom history, written in blood and fire, there has never been a spring campaign on this scale. Any commander with basic sense knows, spring planting is the foundation. It's what fills granaries and feeds armies the following year. Going to war now is cutting your own throat. It's suicidal madness. Martin shot to his feet, eyes burning with anger and worry. He's right, my lord. This breaks every rule of warfare and survival. Kingdom tradition says summer harvest and autumn hunts are the time for war. Summer means fresh grain, strong soldiers, fat horses. Autumn means firm roads and clear skies for armies to move. That's when you fight, at peak strength, And you can raid enemy crops to feed your own campaign. His voice cracked with disbelief. Launching 300,000 troops in spring? That's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard. Unless, his eyes sharpened to blades. Unless what Grom Hellroar is after goes far beyond anything we can imagine. Unless there's a secret behind this war big enough to make him throw away common sense and gamble everything. Even the Orc Kingdom's own survival. I slammed my fist on the table. The boom echoed through the hall. Martin's right. When something makes no sense, something bigger is hiding underneath. I forced myself calm and started thinking out loud, tracing the history. Our Solaro kingdom has been strong for over 300 years, since wise King Charles V restored the realm. King after king ruled well. 2 generations back, Iron Fist King Charles VII crushed the orcs so badly they couldn't raise their heads. After that great war 200 years ago, the orcs limped back to their frozen wastes and submitted for 2 centuries. In all that time, 200 years of our kingdom growing stronger, our armies better equipped. What have the orcs done? Small raiding parties stealing grain and livestock on the border. Have they ever mounted a single real military operation with over 10,000 troops? Never. Not once. They've been like wolves with broken spines, only daring to bare their teeth from the shadows. And now, I stood, sweeping my gaze across everyone. A wolf that's been cowering for 200 years, looking half dead, suddenly bears 300,000 fangs it never had before, at the worst possible time to attack. Does that seem normal? Does that seem reasonable? There must be something enormous behind this. Either the Orc Kingdom has built up a terrifying power we never detected, enough to believe they can crush everything in their path. Or, my voice went ice cold. They found an opportunity. Something that could overturn the entire North, maybe even the whole kingdom. Something so valuable they're willing to bet their nation's future on it and throw everything into a spring gamble. The room went silent. Everyone drew a sharp breath. A chill colder than any northern winter settled over the hall. Whatever was hiding behind this war was far more dangerous than 300,000 orcs. The air in the council hall was so heavy it felt solid. I swept my gaze across every face at the table. The Duke's order is clear. The Royal Logistics Corps will handle frontline supplies, so we don't need to worry about food transport. What we need to figure out right now is how to pull our best fighters for this campaign without leaving our home defenseless. I need this expeditionary force to be the sharpest blade on the battlefield, one that makes the name Kanglan feared. Tell me what we've got. Harvey stood first, unrolling his parchment, voice calm and precise like a counting machine. Labor reserves from prisoners. Over 5,300 low-level monster captives. Goblins, kobolds, working the mines. 220 apprentice-rank orcs with basic combat ability or useful skills, partly doing heavy labor, partly under close guard. 53 black iron rank fighters, gnolls and stronger orc warriors, dangerous, requiring heavy security. And 3 silver rank trolls, enormously powerful and destructive, currently watched in rotation by elite flying tiger squads under multiple restraints. Harvey pushed up his glasses. With this many prisoners, if our main force leaves, there's a serious risk of mass revolt. Those 3 trolls especially are a major threat. Martin rose next, stiff as a spear. The Riser garrison stood at exactly 2,000. The Corps was the original 500 veterans, all now Tier 3 Imperial skilled infantry, experienced, loyal, the backbone. Of the 1,500 new recruits, 300 had broken through to Black Iron rank as proper Imperial infantry. The remaining 1,200 were still Tier 1 Imperial recruits, undertrained and limited in combat value. Even after the Night Order's sweeps, Martin said, brow tight, there are still monster tribes lurking deep in the Cross Mountains and the frozen wastes. 10 villages, 1 town, mines and farms, all spread out. I recommend keeping at minimum 500 bronze rank veterans and 500 apprentice rank recruits for garrison duty, plus a 50-man mobile cavalry squad of elites ready to respond to emergencies anywhere. I turned to Lane. He rose like a mountain coming alive, armor ringing. The Flying Tiger Knight Order was fully combat ready. The original 10 Imperial armored cavalrymen who had followed me from the start, including Lane, had all broken through. Every one of them was now an Imperial elite armored cavalryman. Beyond them, 19 newly promoted Imperial armored cavalrymen at gold rank. and 121 Imperial Heavy Riders at silver rank. Total, 10 Earth Knights, 19 Gold rank Knights, 121 Silver rank Knights. Ready to fight at any moment. I nodded. I knew these numbers well from the monthly reports Lane and Martin submitted. The Flying Tiger Knight Order's terrifying growth rate was my greatest advantage in the north. I tapped one finger on the table like a gavel and made my decisions. Lane, detach 15 riders from the Knight Order. 5 Gold rank armored cavalrymen leading, 10 Silver rank heavy riders supporting. They form a permanent mobile squad here in Kanglan under Martin's command. Their job, crush any prisoner revolt, hunt stray monsters, reinforce any point under attack. Martin, from the garrison, pull 100 bronze rank veterans and 300 black iron new soldiers. 400 total. That's the expeditionary infantry. The remaining 1,600 stay under your command. Hold Kanglan like an iron fortress. Martin answered strong, but I caught the worry in his eyes. 300 black iron recruits with almost zero battlefield experience. I looked straight at him. Martin, the territory's safety is on your shoulders. Those recruits staying behind are the seeds of Kanglan's future. I don't care what method you use. My voice turned sharp. When I return victorious, if even one of those 1,200 apprentice recruits hasn't broken through to black iron rank, you'll be shoveling horse manure in the stables for 3 months. Personally, Martin flinched like he could already smell it. Every trace of hesitation vanished from his face, replaced by do-or-die resolve. My lord, I stake my word on it. If I fail, I'll shovel willingly. But I guarantee, they will be transformed. I knew what he was thinking. With my power working behind the scenes, as long as these men weren't completely hopeless, breaking through to black iron was a matter of hard training and time. He'd push them to the breaking point. Good. I added one more thing. Deep inside the castle, there's still the Earth Knight my grandfather sent. If you face a truly overwhelming enemy, use my written order to call on him. But remember, only in a life-or-death crisis. Day-to-day threats, you and your soldiers handle yourselves. Relief flooded Martin's face. An Earth Knight as a hidden ace was like an anchor holding everything steady. Understood, my lord. I won't let you down. Behind Lane's cold metal visor, I knew he understood. I had squeezed Kanglan's defenses to the absolute limit while pulling together the strongest possible strike force for the campaign. From here on, it would be enemy blood that watered Kanglan's reputation. As for the 1 silver rank commander required by the levy, I let a cold smile cross my face. That will be me, Baron Ron Windsor of Kanglan. Personally, my lord. You're going yourself? Martin and Edwin shouted at the same time. A lord on the front line meant enormous risk. Why not? I stood, and the room felt the weight of it. This is my territory. These are my soldiers. I won't send others into danger in my place. In this war, I stand with my men. We live or die together. I gave final orders. Soren, Harvey, you two have full authority over governance, spring planting, the mines, and public order. Edwin handles logistics and supply. Martin holds the territory with 1,600 troops. Anyone who causes trouble, kill them without mercy. Lane, come with me. Martin, you too. I turned and walked toward the depths of the castle without another word. The heavy black stone door sealed shut behind us, cutting off the world. Inside the secret chamber, blue magic crystals glowed from the walls, lighting up the energy-gathering formation on the floor. The air was thick with magic and a faint smell of blood, traces of my past breakthroughs. My lord, Martin looked uneasy in the strange, oppressive space. Lane stood silent behind me like a steel shadow. I said nothing. I walked to the center of the formation and sat cross-legged. My mind sank inward, and the familiar cold system interface opened. Personal rank, Black Iron Knight, Level 1. Available experience, 12,875. Cost to advance to Silver Knight, Level 2, 10,000. System, Advance. Silver Knight. Command confirmed. Beginning advancement, then it hit me. A flood of energy, far more violent and burning than my black iron breakthrough, erupted from my core like a volcano splitting open. Molten power rammed through every channel in my body. I couldn't hold back a strangled growl. My whole body shook. My skin turned red, veins bulging like thick cords across my flesh. My bones groaned and cracked under the strain, feeling like they might shatter and reform at any moment. The temperature in the chamber spiked. Frost on the walls melted visibly. The hard black stone floor cracked beneath me. "My lord," Martin went pale and lunged forward, but Lane's armored arm blocked him like an iron bar. "Don't move," Lane said through his visor, cold and certain. "The Lord is transforming." He was right. The raging energy was tearing apart my old, fragile black iron pathways. The pain felt like a million steel needles piercing me from the inside. But through that agony, new channels, wider, tougher, silver, were being forced open and rebuilt. My battle aura seed spun wildly, devouring the massive power converted from experience. It was no longer a seed. It was a small blazing sun radiating silver light. Torrents of silver battle aura poured out, flooding through my reborn pathways, bringing tearing pain and newborn strength at the same time. I felt invisible chains snapping inside me, one after another. My aura climbed at terrifying speed. The sluggishness and weakness of black iron fell away, replaced by something sharper, denser, like steel refined 100 times over. When the experience counter stopped at 2,875, an invisible energy storm exploded outward from my body. The air in the chamber froze for a heartbeat, then blasted apart. The wall crystals flickered wildly. Lane and Martin both stumbled back a step. I opened my eyes. Two beams of razor-sharp silver light shot from my pupils like lightning cutting through darkness, flooding the chamber. The power behind that light was leagues beyond black iron. I stood slowly. My body felt the same, but everything else had changed. A faint silver glow seemed to run beneath my skin. Every movement carried a natural weight, steady as a mountain, sharp as a sword. Inside me, silver battle aura surged through wide, strong channels like a roaring river. The strength was like nothing I had felt before. Silver Knight. Breakthrough complete. I clenched my fists, feeling the power flood through me. I looked at Martin's stunned face and let a cold, confident smile cross my lips. "So, does this silver rank commander qualify to lead the campaign personally?" Martin stared at me like he was seeing a different person. The worry drained from his face, replaced by awe and fierce excitement. He crashed to one knee, voice shaking. "My lord's power is supreme. I am completely convinced. This war, Kanglin will win." Lane bowed slightly. Behind his visor, I caught the glint of recognition and anticipation. I took a deep breath, silver aura roaring inside me. I looked at the sealed chamber door as if I could see straight through the stone walls, all the way to Raven Fortress waiting in the north. "Lane, my lord, assemble the night order. At dawn tomorrow, we march." "Yes, my lord." The next morning, the deepest darkness before dawn, the massive oak gates of Kanglin Castle groaned open. Cold morning wind rushed through the passage, carrying the last bite of winter. Outside was no empty wasteland. It was an army standing in killing silence. The Flying Tiger Night Order, 100 silver rank Imperial heavy riders in layered cold iron and refined iron plate, motionless as statues at the front. Their northern warhorses were tall and powerful, snorting clouds of white breath, hooves scraping frozen ground. The riders were silent behind lowered visors, eyes cold and sharp. 12-foot lances pointed at the sky, tips glinting faintly in the dim light. The iron-blooded aura of 100 battles hung around them so thick that even the howling wind seemed to pull back. Behind them stood the 400 elite infantry drawn from the Riser garrison. On the left, 100 Imperial skilled infantry in Tier 3 cold iron armor, carrying hide-covered kite shields and refined iron spears, eyes steady and veteran calm like bedrock. On the right, 300 Imperial infantry in Tier 2 refined iron armor, armed with war axes or heavy swords, carrying a mix of sharp eagerness and nervous tension. They stood in tight formation, silent power coiled and ready to spring. The whole formation was a drawn sword, edge exposed, ready to strike. The air smelled of leather, steel, sweat, and warhorses, blended into the unmistakable scent of war. I sat on a jet-black warhorse with 4 white hooves, wearing custom silver-gray Lord's battle armor engraved with the Snow Wolf crest. Last night's breakthrough had made my presence deeper, more contained. Silver aura flowed quietly inside me, filling me with confidence and control. Beside me, Lane sat like a shadow knight on his armored mount, visor down, only his cold, merciless eyes showing. Man and horse together looked like a demon god returned from the underworld. He was the sharpest point of this blade. Martin marched up and knelt, his golden-ranked knight armor polished bright, sword at his hip, expression solemn. Garrison fully assembled, my lord, awaiting your command. I looked past him, at the 1,600 garrison soldiers staying behind, and further out, the townspeople of Kangland who had come on their own to see us off, held back by a perimeter line. Their simple faces showed worry, hope, and quiet support. Martin, my voice carried clear across the field. Kangland territory, it's yours now. He slammed his fist against his chest, voice booming like a bell. On my life, as long as I stand, the territory stands. I will be here when you return victorious. I glanced at Soren, Harvey, and Edwin standing behind him. Their faces were tight, their nods firm. No words needed. Move out. I pulled the reins. A deep, mournful war horn tore through the pre-dawn silence. The sound of departure, the opening note of battle. Lane drew his imperial saber first, the cold blade pointing north. Behind him, 100 silver knights moved as one. Lances leveled, sabers drawn, a wall of gleaming steel. The infantry followed. Heavy boots struck frozen earth in unison, a deep drumbeat of marching. Spears rose like a forest, shields formed a wall. I rode at the head, my black horse surging forward through the gates like an arrow leaving the bow. Lane was right behind me. The 100 knights launched into motion, a steel flood, hooves shattering morning frost, the thunder shaking the ground itself. Stay safe, my lord. Come back to us. Kill every last orc. The townspeople's voices chased after us, choked with tears, heavy with prayers, raw with the simplest kind of hope. I didn't look back. I sat straight, eyes fixed on the north, that horizon buried under lead-gray clouds. Wind caught my wolf fur cloak and snapped it behind me. The army moved like a silent river of steel along the ice-covered road, rolling toward the Cross Mountains. Garrison soldiers lined the route in solemn salute, watching their brothers leave. Martin stood on the wall, watching until the column, carrying Kangland's hope and future, disappeared into the shadowed mountains to the north. The silver wolf had bared its claws and fangs and stepped into the fires of the northern frontier. At Raven Fortress, the name Kangland would be forged in blood. After a full day of hard riding, the Cross Mountains were behind us. The moment we cleared the last mountain pass, the sight that opened up ahead made every man in my column hold his breath. Raven Ridge Fortress. It wasn't built on flat ground. It grew out of the earth itself, fused with the entire Raven Ridge mountain range like a steel beast rising from the stone. The towering walls were made of dark ice obsidian rock, a material found only in the north, hard as refined steel. 1,000 years of weather and war had turned the surface a deep black that seemed to swallow light. Massive claw marks, impact craters, and burn scars covered every stretch of wall, silent proof of the horrors that had crashed against it over the centuries. Along the top, arrow towers and magic towers bristled like rows of fangs, their tips flickering with blue and crimson energy. Giant crossbow batteries and catapults crouched behind the battlements, showing their ugly outlines. At the highest point, a huge banner flew, the Raven Duke's crest, a raven soaring through a blizzard, snapping in the mountain wind with an authority that pressed down on everything below. In front of the fortress stretched a vast assembly plain, deliberately cleared of anything. Right now it was a boiling ocean of soldiers. Tens of thousands of tents spread across the ground like mushrooms after rain. Colored noble banners flew above them, carving out distinct territories. The air was thick with the smell of sweat, leather, rust, and horse dung, mixed with shouting in a dozen regional accents, barked orders, the clanging of field forges, and the screaming of war horses. It all blended into one massive, chaotic symphony of war. I reined in my horse and scanned the camp like a hawk. I spotted the Winterhold Earldom's camp, banner showing a frozen castle. Large, well-organized, with the elite, Winter Guard, Night Order patrolling outside in formation. Their infantry was well-equipped, morale high. One of the oldest military powers in the north outside the Duke himself. Blackmount Fortress's camp, banner of a black mountain peak. Famous for heavy infantry. Everywhere I looked, soldiers in thick plate armor moved like walking fortresses, carrying massive tower shields and long-handled battle axes, radiating a mountain-like steadiness. Icewind Valley's camp, banner of howling wind and ice crystals. Known for light cavalry and rangers, agile riders darted through the camp while sharp-eyed rangers with longbows slung across their backs moved in quick, efficient groups. Scattered among these were many smaller baron and viscount camps, flags all different, soldiers varying wildly in gear and spirit. Most of them huddled near the larger noble camps for protection. "My lord, it seems we're not the earliest to arrive, but far from the last," Lane said quietly, bringing his horse alongside mine. Even he looked struck by the sheer scale. This was bigger than anything we had imagined. I nodded. Near the fortress core, I noticed an open area reserved under the Raven Duke's own banner, clearly held for his personal elite legions. The outer rings of camps spread outward like ripples, arranged by rank and strength. A newly created barony like mine would be pushed to the very edge. "Lane, my lord, take the column. Over there." I pointed my riding crop toward a stretch near the mountain's edge. It was on the outskirts, but the ground was slightly elevated with a clear view in every direction. Hard to surround, easy to watch from. A good defensive position even if it was far from the center. "Yes, my lord." Lane wheeled his horse to the front of the formation and threw his arm forward. "Flying Tiger Knight Order. Advance." 100 silver rank heavy riders launched forward at once, hooves hammering frozen ground in perfect unison. They moved like a silent steel flood, their layered cold iron and refined iron armor catching the gray light, lances rising like a forest, sabers sheathed, killing intent rolling off them in waves. Every eye on the plain turned to watch. Whispers spread through the surrounding camps like wildfire. Where did those cavalry come from? Look at that armor, cold iron plate. How much does a single set cost? 100 heavy riders. Which Earl's main knight order is that? Wait, that banner. The Snow Wolf crest. But the Snow Wolf Earl's main force hasn't arrived yet. That smaller flag, Kangland territory? Ron Windsor? Never heard of him. A barony with cavalry like that. Over 100 silver rank knights? And those squad leaders, every one of them feels at least gold rank. A barony? You're joking. A viscount at his peak might field a dozen gold rank knights. A baron with this many? Am I dreaming? Surprise, confusion, envy, and a hint of wariness poured toward us from every direction. A force like ours made no sense for a mere baron. The Flying Tiger Knight Order ignored it all. Under Lane's command, they reached our designated area fast and efficient. Riders dismounted in unison, set up camp, posted guards, and tended horses, silent, professional, cold. The mark of veterans who had fought and survived 100 battles. Then the 400 infantry arrived. Their gear wasn't as eye-catching as the knights, but the 300 black iron soldiers marched with steady steps and sharp eyes, and the 100 bronze veterans carried a killing edge that no ordinary baron's militia could match. I sat on my horse at the center of the forming camp, watching it take shape. Beyond it lay the massive beast of Raven Fortress, and below it the endless ocean of banners and soldiers from across the north. I breathed in air that tasted of iron and cold, silver aura flowing quietly through me. "Raven Fortress," I murmured. "Ron Windsor has arrived. The name Kangland will be written here, in orc blood." The camp was still being built, soldiers hammering stakes, digging ditches, settling horses, when I heard something that cut through all the noise. A deep, rolling thunder of hooves, perfectly synchronized, carrying a discipline and weight that instantly drowned out everything around it. I looked toward the sound and saw a cavalry force of about 1,000 riding along the main road inside the fortress perimeter, heading for that reserved core area. Their presence hit like a mountain bearing down. Their equipment was beyond anything else on this plain. Not ordinary steel plate, royal mithril-edged heavy armor, shimmering with a pale gold glow, covered in complex defensive runes. Their warhorses wore masterwork magical barding with weight reduction and protection enchantments at every joint. Instead of lances, they carried heavy runic cavalry spears and standard royal military sabers, the tips and edges flickering with light, clearly enchanted with anti-magic and sharpness properties. At the front flew 2 banners. The larger one showed a roaring golden lion circling crossed scepters, the royal crest of the Solaro Kingdom. Beside it, slightly smaller, the Raven Duke's crest, a raven soaring through a blizzard. The Royal Knight Order, 7th Legion. the permanent garrison force of Raven Fortress. The entire plain seemed to hold its breath. Tens of thousands of eyes locked onto them with awe, envy, and more than a little fear. Even the most arrogant noble private armies pulled back their swagger. But my eyes went straight to the commander riding between those two banners. He wore dark gold command armor more ornate than the rest, with roaring lion heads carved into the shoulder plates. No helmet, showing a weathered, dignified face with frost at the temples and eyes deep as an abyss. He scanned the road with the calm, penetrating gaze of a man who had commanded from high places and survived countless battlefields. My third uncle, Tyrion Windsor, my father's own brother, commander of the Royal Knight Order's 7th Legion. Uncle Tyrion, the words left my mouth before I could stop them. I never expected to meet him here, like this. Almost the same instant, his sharp gaze cut through the crowd and landed directly on me, standing on the low hill, as if drawn by instinct. A flash of surprise crossed his face, then shifted to something more measured, recognition and quiet assessment. He didn't react the way my brother Fletcher would have. He simply raised his hand. Halt. One word, low and commanding. 1,000 royal knights froze from full motion to perfect stillness in a heartbeat, moving as one body. The military precision was terrifying. Tyrion broke from the column with a handful of personal guards and rode toward my hill at an unhurried pace, hooves striking the ground with a steady, heavy rhythm. Then his composure broke into a broad, fierce grin. He reached me and slammed his armored hand down on my shoulder hard enough to rattle my teeth. Huh, Ron, he laughed, loud and proud. Good lad. You're a true wolf pup of the Windsor pack. Hey, Uncle Tyrion, I said, grinning back. It's been a while. Uncle Tyrion's deep eyes lit up like flames as he scanned the Knight Order behind me. His gaze cut through their armor like a blade, reading the quality of their battle aura, far more refined than ordinary silver rank. Then his stare lingered on the 10 elite armored cavalrymen in their dark abyss armor, radiating the terrifying pressure of Earth Knights. Good, good, good. 3 thunderous shouts burst from him. The permanent frost of command on his face melted into wild, unguarded pride. He slapped my shoulder so hard my bones ached. You little rascal, his voice was like hot lava, full of swagger and feeling. I used to tell your father, that boy of yours does nothing but chew on sword manuals and hide in his study like an old scholar. Where's the wildness? Where's the killer instinct? He's a sheep wearing wolf skin, he roared with laughter, the sound shaking the air around us. I was wrong. You weren't lacking ambition. You just buried it deeper than anyone else, held it in tighter than anyone. And then you pull this out without a word. He swept his arm toward my 100 silver knights, eyes blazing. Over 100 silver rank riders, and every last one of them battle-hardened, foundations solid, aura dense, real veterans. This scale, this quality, his voice climbed higher, dripping with exaggerated awe and open family pride. Give you a few more years to grow this, multiply those numbers, get yourself 1,000 riders. At that point, forget ordinary earls having to walk around you. Even a Sky Knight like me would have to think twice before charging head-on into that steel flood. He wasn't joking. 1 or 2 silver knights meant nothing to a Sky Knight. 10 were just a slightly bigger nuisance. But 100? 1,000? Knights who trained together, fought together, breathed together. They could synchronize their battle aura through special formations. That combined force could warp space, suppress domains, suffocate Sky Knights, and make even epic-rank powerhouses think twice about getting trapped inside. That was why kingdoms poured fortunes into building large, balanced Knight Orders. A single Sky Knight was precious, but 1,000-strong Silver Knight Order carried far greater strategic weight. Tyrion's eyes sharpened with memory and pride. Like your grandfather Duke Raven's Frost Knights. 10,000 silver rank riders. When they form the Frost Fall battle formation and their aura resonates, the war cloud alone reaches the sky. Even an epic rank master caught inside would bleed, could die right there on the field. He straightened his back, pride rising from deep in his blood. And our Windsor family. Why have we stood in the north for 1,000 years? Why does even the royal house give us respect? His voice rang with iron certainty. Because of 3 Knight Orders under our banner, each one terrifying enough to make any enemy run. Your father the Snow Wolf Earl's Wrath of the Snow Wolf. Your second uncle's border force, the Fangs of the Frost Wolf. And the one I used to command, the Ice Plains Ripper. Every single one can stand toe-to-toe with any of Duke Raven's 5 Great Knight Orders and not give an inch. What we lack isn't quality. He held up 2 fingers with a shrewd glint. It's numbers. The Duke sits on the Northern Duchy. More resources, enough to maintain 5 orders. Our Snow Wolf family goes all out to keep 3. But soldier for soldier, kill for kill. He cracked a fierce grin and thumped my shoulder again. Windsor wolves have never feared anyone. And you, boy. His gaze burned into me with an expectation I had never seen from him before. You finally got your own set of fangs. Real ones. Raise them well. I'm putting my money on you. The day the Snow Wolf family's 4th legendary Knight Order gets its name, it might just be yours. Hot blood surged through me. I looked back at the Flying Tiger Knight Order, still young, still growing, and the fire in my eyes burned even brighter. Then, just like that, Tyrion switched. The laughing uncle disappeared, and the Royal Legion commander stepped back in. His hawk eyes swept over our shabby temporary camp, and the mixed stares, curious, jealous, wary, aimed at us from every direction. All right, kid. His voice dropped heavy with authority, the kind forged by years of commanding thousands. Catching up can wait. Let's sort out your situation first. He pointed at our camp spot on the outer edge of the Allied army, right next to empty frozen wasteland, and scowled openly. This spot. No good. Middle of nowhere. Wind cut straight through. If orcs creep down from the northern waste or circle around the western mountains, you're the first one hit. My nephew brings troops to fight for the Alliance and gets shoved into this hole? Not happening. His voice boomed clear across a wide stretch of the surrounding camps, and every whispered conversation nearby went instantly silent. Uncle Tyrion didn't care about the stairs. His riding crop slashed through the air like a blade, pointing at a prime stretch of ground right next to the Royal Knight Order's 7th Legion camp. High ground, wide views. Only 100 steps from the main fortress road. That spot had been reserved for the Black Rock Viscount, an established noble with real power. East side of the 7th Legion grounds. That open area, Tyrion's voice boomed like thunder, crushing everything flat. It's yours, Ron Windsor. Move your forces there immediately. From now on, your Kangland banner flies right next to mine. The camps around us erupted. The east side? That's the Black Rock Viscount spot. The Legion commander personally reassigned it. That's right next to the Royal Knights. The safest position with the best supply access. The Black Rock Viscount has 500 bronze rank elites. How can 500 bronze mean nothing? Kangland brought over 100 silver rank knights. Did you see that gear? Those lead riders. Their aura feels heavy as mountains. Close to Earth Knight level, at least. Earth Knights? More than one. 10 Earth Knights? From a barony. You ever seen a barony field a force like that? The Snow Wolf family's depth is bottomless. Shock, disbelief, envy, and fear poured in from every direction. From the Black Rock Viscount's camp came angry murmuring and stifled growls. But faced with the terrifying strength behind me and the Snow Wolf family's deep-rooted authority in the north, not a single person dared step forward to challenge it openly. They swallowed their bitterness in silence. Lane and my knights could barely contain themselves. They knew being near the Royal Knights was ideal, but nobody expected Uncle Tyrion to simply seize one of the best positions on the entire plain, someone else's reserve position, and hand it to us without blinking. Tyrion ignored the uproar like it was buzzing flies. He locked eyes with his deputy, a man in mithril heavy armor with an aura steady as deep water. Craig, sir, my orders. Tyrion's voice came down like cold steel, every word carrying the weight of absolute authority. First, Baron Ron Windsor's forces relocate immediately to the designated area east of the 7th Legion. Anyone who obstructs the move is in violation of military orders. Execute them on the spot. Second, Logistics Division. Supply Kangland's forces at double the standard Baron allocation. Priority delivery, full quantity, grain, arrows, medicine, fuel, everything. Any shortage or delay, the officer in charge loses his head. Military Tribunal. Third, Engineering Division. Send a top crew to help Kangland build their camp and fortify defenses. Finished before sundown. Anyone who falls behind gets 100 lashes. Fourth, announced to the entire army. Tyrion's gaze swept the surrounding camps like an ice spike, radiating absolute dominance. Canglan's forces are under the direct command of the 7th Legion. Their camp is an extension of our defense zone. Anyone who trespasses or causes trouble will be treated as an attack on the Royal Knight Order. Kill without mercy. Yes, Commander. Craig's voice rang like a war bell. He wheeled his horse and shot toward the logistics and engineering camps with a squad of fierce-looking messengers, barking the blood-scented orders as he rode. The 7th Legion's massive war machine roared to life, efficient, cold, unstoppable. Tyrion turned back to me, his severity softening just a fraction. You heard all that. Why are you still standing there? Get moving. Before dark, I want to see your banner planted firmly in that spot. Yes, Uncle. I pushed down the shock and excitement flooding through me, straightened my back, and let my voice ring out sharp and clear. I understood exactly what he had done. He used the most direct, most overwhelming, most unapologetically forceful method possible to throw the biggest shield he could over me. That kind of protection, heavy, unquestionable, carved in iron, I would not forget. I spun to face my troops. Lane, my lord, order the entire force. Break camp immediately. Destination, east side of the Royal Knight Order's 7th Legion grounds. Yes, my lord. The camp exploded into motion. Soldiers didn't know the details, but they could read the fire on our faces and they heard the words, Royal Knight Order grounds. Even the slowest man understood what it meant. A wave of pride, safety, and surging morale swept through every rank. They moved faster than I had ever seen, tearing down tents, loading gear, harnessing wagons at triple speed. Every spine straightened. Every pair of eyes burned with new confidence. Under countless stares, envious, jealous, awed, afraid, and with Craig's ruthless efficiency coordinating everything, backed by the Royal Engineering crews working at full tilt, my army flowed like a silent steel river away from that forgotten edge of the plain and into the golden zone. When the Canglan banner, the roaring snow wolf over deep waters, finally stood tall and firm right beside the 7th Legion's massive golden lion and raven flag, the entire Allied camp at Raven Fortress felt the tremor. It was like a new star had suddenly blazed to life on the Northern War stage. Canglan territory, an unknown, freshly minted barony, had arrived at the fortress and on its very first day, backed by unfathomable family power and an elite force that shook souls, placed under the iron wing of Legion Commander Tyrion Windsor himself, vaulted into a position no one in the Alliance could ignore. I stood at the center of the new camp, feeling the solid, prime ground under my boots, looking at the steel wall of the Royal Knight Order not far away, and felt a confidence and fire I had never known before. The stage at Raven Fortress was set. Now it was time to write the legend of Canglan, in orc blood and bone. Our new camp sat snug against the Royal 7th Legion's grounds like a young wolf beside a lion. Defenses were taking shape with help from the engineering crews. Morale was high. The Flying Tiger Knights trained hard at the camp's edge under Lane's command, silver aura cutting through the air with sharp whistling sounds. I stood on the watchtower at the center of camp, looking north past the sea of tents toward the gray wasteland beyond. War was coming. You could taste it in the air. But thanks to Uncle Tyrion's iron-fisted arrangements, our corner felt steady. On the third morning, just as the first pale light broke through heavy clouds, a deep rumbling rolled in from the horizon. It started like muffled thunder underground, then grew into the terrifying roar of an army on the move. The entire fortress seemed to vibrate. Warning horns blasted from the highest watchtower, the top-level alert, meaning a massive, high-threat force was approaching. I snapped my gaze north. On the horizon, a flood of steel and frost was sweeping toward us like an avalanche. The fangs of the Frost Wolf, one of the Snow Wolf family's 3 legendary Knight Orders. Their scale dwarfed my Flying Tiger Knight Order. As far as I could see, a steel forest stretched across the land. Over 10,000 riders. What hit hardest were the mounts. Not horses, frost wolves. Beasts native to the deep frozen wastes. Bigger than any war horse. Covered in thick silver-white fur, fangs bared, eyes savage, frost forming where their paws struck the ground. 10,000 of them charging at once looked like a living blizzard crashing across the earth, and even from behind fortress walls the cold reached us and bit deep. The knights wore matching Frostwolf cold iron heavy armor, glowing with a faint blue chill, carved with snarling snow wolf totems in rough, brutal lines. They carried oversized cold iron lances with deadly frostlight at the tips and heavy snow wolf sabers at their hips. Battle aura poured off them and merged into a single crushing pressure like a polar storm descending on the plain. Every rider was at least silver rank. Mixed in were a staggering number of gold rank knights, and I could feel dozens of mountain-heavy, glacier-deep auras, earth knights. At the very front, beneath the massive banner of a silver wolf tearing through a blizzard, one figure radiated power like a moving frozen mountain range. Sky Knight pressure. Uncle Griffin, my heart jolted. That figure was Griffin Windsor, my father's brother, current commander of the Fangs of the Frost Wolf, and a powerful Sky Knight. The Night Order moved fast, a white death storm that reached the fortress in what felt like seconds. Where they passed, the ground froze and the air temperature plunged. Every soldier in every camp on the plain felt it in their bones, a soul-deep shiver. Even the most arrogant noble troops went silent, eyes full of awe. "Open the gates," the fortress commander's voice boomed from the walls. The massive gate groaned upward. The Fangs of the Frost Wolf didn't slow down. Under Griffin's lead they poured through the fortress gates like a steel flood, hooves hammering the stone roads with deafening thunder, frost spreading through the entire gate passage in an instant. This was the Snow Wolf family's peak military power, announcing itself in the most overwhelming way possible. They rode straight to the core zone, the area reserved for the very top military forces. Their arrival hit the boiling Allied camp like a block of ice dropped into hot oil. A heartbeat of dead silence, then an explosion of awed whispers. I watched from the watchtower as that steel river disappeared into the fortress depths, my pulse pounding. This was the true depth of the Snow Wolf family. This was the kind of force that could stand face to face with Duke Raven's 5 great night orders and not flinch. And the man commanding it was my own uncle. Then a messenger in light Frostwolf armor galloped to our camp entrance. By order of Commander Griffin Windsor, Baron Ron Windsor of Kangland Territory is summoned immediately to the Fangs of the Frost Wolf headquarters. I took a deep breath, a spark of excitement lighting up inside me. "Lane, my lord, come with me to see Uncle Griffin." "Yes, my lord." I straightened my armor, mounted up with Lane beside me, and followed the messenger toward the core zone. The closer we rode, the thicker the cold, killing air became. The low breathing of 10,000 frost wolves mixed with the clink of night armor created a pressure that pressed against the chest with every step. When I stepped through the gates of the Fangs of the Frost Wolf camp, the cold, stern atmosphere I expected wasn't there. Instead, a booming laugh like a thunderclap burst from the biggest tent at the center. "Huh, there he is. Took you long enough." The heavy beast-hide door flap flew open, and out came a figure built like a human bear. Griffin Windsor, my second uncle. He had shed his commander's armor and wore just a thick wolfskin vest, showing arms knotted with muscle and covered in old scars, skin bronzed by a lifetime of wind and war. His grin was wide as the sun, eyes still sharp as ever but blazing with warmth. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and slammed his massive palm onto my shoulder. The hit nearly buckled my knees. Half my body went numb. "Ron, you rascal." His voice shook the air like a war drum. "How long has it been? And you've gone and built yourself an army? Showed up at Raven Fortress to fight orcs without a word to your uncle?" He looked me up and down with a mix of surprise, admiration, and open delight, like he was staring at a rough gemstone that already outshone polished jewels. "Uncle Griffin," I steadied myself, smiling. His wild warmth was nothing like what I had expected. Every bit of nervousness I carried melted away. He didn't give me time to chat. He threw an arm around my shoulders and half-dragged me toward the camp's central parade ground, his grip making me feel like a rag doll. Lane followed like a shadow, eyes scanning the powerful Frost Wolf knights around us, though even he relaxed a little under Griffin's genuine warmth. The parade ground was packed with Fangs of the Frost Wolf officers, every one of them radiating fierce, battle-hardened energy. Griffin waved his huge hand at me and bellowed across the field. "All of you, take a good look. This is my brother Amon's boy, Ron Windsor, Baron of Kangland." He paused, face bursting with pride. Then his voice climbed even louder. Guess how many troops this kid brought? 100 silver rank knights. Every last one a battle-tested veteran. And 10 earth knights as his personal guard. His voice rang with the kind of pride you'd hear from a man showing off his own work. Look at him. This is what a snow wolf pup looks like. This is how you raise soldiers. This is what it means to make something of yourself. Sharp intakes of breath swept the field. Those hard, assessing stares from the officers transformed into shock, disbelief, and then deep respect. 100 silver knights and 10 earth knights. That was core strength for an earldom, not a barony. Outstanding, worthy of the earl's own blood, like father, like son. After a heartbeat of silence, the field erupted in thundering cheers. These iron-blooded men respected one thing above all, strength. And I had earned theirs. Griffin roared with laughter, pounding my shoulder again. Good. You haven't shamed your father. Haven't shamed the Windsor name. Beautifully done. I love it. He spun and yelled at a nearby deputy. Go. Tell the supply camp. Best meat, strongest drink tonight. I'm throwing a welcome feast for my nephew. Celebrating a new wolf pack joining the Snow Wolf banner. The deputy ran off grinning. Griffin leaned close, dropping his voice to a rough, sly whisper. Nice work, kid. Your Uncle Tyrion placing you next to him was a smart move. Stay put and stay easy. With me and your third uncle here, nobody at Raven Fortress touches a hair on your head. When the orcs come, we fight shoulder to shoulder, uncle and nephew, and we slaughter every last one of them. I looked at this man, overflowing with passion and power, and felt warmth and fire flood through me. Every worry I'd carried was gone, replaced by a fierce sense of belonging and fighting spirit. Yes, Uncle Griffin, I'll give everything I have. I won't disgrace the Snow Wolf name. We fight together, and we crush them. That's my wolf pup. His laughter shook the sky. Then the laughter stopped mid-echo, and his tone flipped. Those furnace-hot eyes went round with mock fury, and his palm cracked against my shoulder yet again. But you ungrateful little pup. You've been out on your own for what? 4 months? And you couldn't send your uncle a single message? If your third uncle hadn't told me, I wouldn't even know you were chewing ice on the northern wastes. If I'd known earlier, I'd have sent a few Frost Wolf squads to help you flatten that territory of yours. Sorry, uncle. My mistake. I winced from the hit, but my chest was warm. Every rough word from him dripped with real concern. The Snow Wolf family was large, with many branch families and no shortage of quiet rivalries and undercurrents. But the direct bloodline, the 3 brothers, my father Amon, Uncle Griffin, and Uncle Tyrion, was unbreakable iron. Their bond was the true foundation of everything the Snow Wolf family had built. There was an old saying in the north that made people's blood run cold. Better to provoke an ice dragon than cross the 3 Windsor brothers. Each had inherited terrifying talent from my grandfather Norn Windsor, the legendary epic rank knight, and each had reached the peak of a different domain, forming a perfect, indestructible triangle. My father Amon, the Snow Wolf Earl, family head, the Fox Wolf of the North, maybe not the strongest fighter of the 3, but his mind ran deep as an abyss. His strategies were sharp as a fox's, his ability to command the big picture unmatched in the North. He was the family's brain and soul. Uncle Griffin, commander of the Fangs of the Frost Wolf, the War Wolf of the Frost Plains, the undisputed combat peak of the 3 brothers. A sky knight at the summit of his rank, only one step from the legendary epic realm. His knight order was the family's deadliest claw. He was its strongest military pillar. Uncle Tyrion, commander of the Royal 7th Legion, the Iron Prison Wolf, cold by nature, ruthless in enforcing law, never forgetting a slight. His Royal Legion was both a devastating fighting force and the embodiment of order at Raven Fortress. Anyone who dared challenge the family's dignity would face his cold, prison iron retribution. He was the family's hardest shield and sharpest punishing blade. Any one of them alone could dominate a region. When all 3 moved together, the entire North trembled. What made it most terrifying was that Griffin and Tyrion's loyalty to my father was absolute and unquestioning. They saw themselves as Amon's right and left arms, the twin fangs, that guarded the family head and tore apart enemies. Griffin had once declared publicly, "Where my brother points, I strike. I don't care if it's a mountain of swords or a sea of fire." Tyrion said less, but acted more. Any challenge to Amon's authority met his cold, lethal response before anyone else could blink. That unbreakable brotherhood froze every ambitious branch family's scheming solid. They understood perfectly. Reaching for the family head seat meant facing all three at once. The shadow-lurking fox who never miscalculated, the frost-plane war wolf whose claws could tear the sky, and the iron prison wolf who never forgot or forgave. That wasn't a gamble. It was suicide. There was a story still whispered across the north. Years ago, a marquis family's heir tried to drive a wedge between the three brothers. At a public banquet, he openly insulted my father with carefully poisoned words meant to split them apart. He never made it out of the banquet hall that night. Uncle Tyrion, the iron prison wolf, in front of every noble present, broke both of the heir's legs with his bare hands. Clean, efficient, eyes cold as a blade, as if he were crushing a noisy insect. The crack of snapping bones still haunted the nightmares of nobles who had been in that room. It didn't end there. When word reached home, my father showed a side the North rarely saw. Without hesitation, he gave one command. All three legendary night orders, Wrath of the Snow Wolf, Fangs of the Frost Wolf, and Ice Plains Ripper, awoke like three drawn blades. Banners blotted out the sun, hooves roared like thunder. Tens of thousands of elite knights, radiating murderous intent, lined up along that marquis family's border. Lance tips pointed at their heartland. It wasn't a threat. It was a naked declaration of war. The entire Solaro kingdom shook. The tension could have snapped bone. A full-scale war that might crack the kingdom's foundations was a hair's breadth away. In the end, King Charles IX himself intervened, sending his most trusted ministers riding through the night to mediate at the highest level. It cost the crown dearly to calm the storm. Nobody dared imagine what those three enraged wolves would have unleashed otherwise. By then my father had already married Lydia, daughter of the Raven Duke, cementing an alliance between two of the North's greatest powers. Together, those two families could shake half the kingdom. That marquis family had simply kicked a wall harder than the northern permafrost itself. Looking at Uncle Griffin standing before me, this man of towering spirit and terrifying power, who had once led the fangs of the Frost Wolf to a border standoff for family honor without a second thought, what I felt went beyond admiration and pride. It was a deep, blood-level awe. Awe at my father's bottomless cunning and iron will. Awe at Uncle Griffin's mountain-breaking strength and fearless courage. Awe at Uncle Tyrion's cold, merciless precision. The glory and iron will forged by these three legendary uncles, strong enough to make a kingdom tremble, filled me with immense pride. And with it, the heavy weight of responsibility. Days passed in tense waiting. Armies from across the north kept pouring in like rivers feeding the sea, filling the plains around Raven Fortress with tents, banners, and the sounds of war preparation. 700,000. That was the final count. Soldiers from dozens of earldoms, viscounties, and baronies, each carrying their family crests and their warriors' pride. The fortress and everything around it had become one enormous war machine. The air was heavy with leather, steel, sweat, and the unmistakable weight of a great battle drawing near. But all those numbers brought little comfort. Orc wolf riders appeared more and more often along the horizon, ghostly figures on massive, savage wolves, circling just beyond the watchtower's range. They never came close. They just watched, prowled, and stared with cold, hungry eyes. Every sighting report tightened the tension another notch. Worse news came through secret magic channels from my grandfather, Duke Raven himself. The Orc Kingdom's royal elite legions were marching south in full force. Tribes across the northern Orc lands were swarming toward the border like sharks smelling blood. Estimated strength, 800,000, and still growing. I read the decoded message and my fingertips went cold. Sweat beaded at my temples. 800,000 Orc warriors. Not just a number. Orcs were born with powerful bodies, bred for war, individually stronger than ordinary human soldiers. That army carried enough destructive force to make any commander's blood freeze. Our kingdom, the Solaro Kingdom, was a strong human nation at the height of centuries of growth. We had scraped together everything the North had and reached 700,000. The Orcs were sending 800,000, nearly half their entire nation's fighting power. If they didn't have to guard their western border against the dwarven mountain fortresses and their eastern border against the greedy lions of the Klein Kingdom, The Orc King might have brought his whole nation down on us. What could possibly be worth this level of madness? The question hung over me and every allied commander like the North's permanent gray clouds. No answer came. On the 10th day, I was in my tent studying the latest defense maps when a loud, familiar laugh cut through the camp like sunlight through storm clouds. "Ron, where are you hiding, you rascal?" I shot up. That voice, my second brother Vincent. I rushed out, and there he was at the camp entrance, reining in his horse with that confident grin. Vincent Windsor, a few years older than me, Viscount of Frost Valley, one of the best among the Snow Wolf family's younger generation. "Vincent," I couldn't help smiling as I strode up to meet him. He swung down from his horse, smooth and athletic. His face carried the sharp Windsor edge, but his eyes held more cunning and steadiness than Uncle Griffin's wildfire. He clapped my shoulder, firm but brotherly. "Look at you. It hasn't been that long, and your night order is already stealing my thunder." He laughed, eyes sweeping across the training grounds where the Flying Tiger Knights were drilling. His gaze paused on Lane and the Earth Knights, and open surprise flashed across his face. 100 silver knights, over a dozen gold, and 10 Earth Knights? "Ron, did you dig up an ancient dragon's hoard? Even your big brother here is jealous. Come on, Vincent." I scratched my head, grinning but sincere. "If you hadn't sent me those 100+ Black Iron Riders and 10 Bronze Knights when I was just starting out, I'd never have survived the early days. I haven't forgotten that." "Stop it," he waved me off, laughing. "We're brothers. No need for that. Seeing you succeed makes me happy. Besides," he winked, "with your strength now, when I run into something I can't handle, I'll be the one borrowing your troops." We both laughed, and for a moment the war clouds felt lighter. I asked what he had brought. Vincent's confident smile widened. His approach was different from mine, less about elite few, more about cavalry shock power. Frost Valley was famous for its horses. He had brought 200 bronze-rank knights and 300 Black Iron Knights, all light fast cavalry, top-tier mobility. No heavy infantry at all. About 1,500 total, but those 500 well-equipped, well-trained riders could launch a mass charge powerful enough to tear through an enemy line several times their size. A fast strike force that the Snow Wolf family counted on. We were still talking when a knight wearing the Raven Duke's household guard uniform arrived at the camp entrance, face solemn. "By order of Duke Raven, Baron Ron Windsor of Kangland Territory is summoned immediately to the Duke's castle." Vincent and I exchanged a look. We both saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. My grandfather, the supreme commander of the North, calling for me now. There had to be something important. "Go, Ron." Vincent gripped my shoulder, eyes steady and encouraging. "When the Duke summons, it matters. Remember, the Snow Wolf family stands behind you." I took a deep breath, nodded, and straightened my armor. "Wait here for me, brother. I'll be back." I mounted up with Lane at my side and followed the Raven Guard toward the towering castle at the heart of the fortress, the seat of the North's highest power. My chest held a knot of nerves at facing my grandfather, mixed with the heavy sense that this moment mattered. The coming storm would be my chance to prove myself, and the moment when Kangland Territory, sheltered under both the Snow Wolf and Raven banners, would step into the light. I followed the Raven Guard with Lane at my side, riding through layer after layer of heavily guarded camps toward the highest point of the fortress, the Raven Duke's castle. It wasn't separate from the fortress. It grew out of it like the head of some ancient beast, built from the same dark, ice-obsidian rock as the walls below. 1,000 years of war and weather had scarred its surface with blade marks and faded magic runes. At the top, the massive Raven banner snapped in the freezing wind like a god's eye looking down on everything. At the entrance, 2 lines of Raven guards stood like statues in deep blue armor marked with the Raven crest, their presence so heavy the air itself seemed to thicken. They only moved aside when the escort showed his token. Inside, the light turned dim and solemn. Enormous stone pillars held up a vaulted ceiling. Portraits of past Raven Dukes and ancient war trophies lined the walls. The air smelled of pine, leather, and steel, mixed with the unmistakable weight of a place where power lived. We were led to a grand council chamber. Heavy oak doors carved with raven totems pulsed faintly with cold magic. "Duke, Lord Andre, Baron Ron Windsor of Kangland has arrived. Enter." A voice came through the door, old, deep, rolling like distant thunder, carrying absolute authority that seemed to reach straight into my soul. The doors opened, and the pressure hit me like a wall. The chamber was bright, with tall windows overlooking the entire fortress. A massive map of the north covered one wall. Only 2 people were inside. In the main seat sat an old man, not especially tall, wearing a deep blue robe embroidered with golden ravens, no armor. But when he raised his eyes, those pupils were deep as frozen pools, holding storms and lightning inside them. Age had carved his face with lines like axe cuts, but instead of weakening him, every wrinkle added to the sense that this man saw through everything and controlled it all. This was the pillar of the north, Duke Creole Augustus, my grandfather. Standing below him was a tall, hard-faced man in Raven family command armor, eyes sharp as a hawk, posture straight as a spear, radiating the cutting edge of an unsheathed blade. This was Creel's eldest son, first heir of the Raven family, commander of the Raven's Beak Knight Order, Andre Augustus. My uncle on my mother's side. I took a deep breath, pushed down the nerves, and stepped forward. I stopped a few paces from the main seat, pressed my fist to my chest in a proper knight's salute, and spoke steady and clear. Baron Ron Windsor of Kangland Territory greets Duke Creole and Lord Andre. Lane followed with a crisp military salute behind me. My grandfather's gaze landed on me like a physical weight, the kind that felt like it could see past skin and bone straight into the soul. He said nothing for a long moment. The silence pressed down on the room until the air itself felt solid. He finally spoke, voice still deep, but with the faintest thread of something almost warm beneath the ice. Stand, Ron. Thank you, my lord. Andre's eyes studied me too, probing, measuring. He didn't speak, but the pressure of a top-tier commander rolled off him and pushed against my chest. Tyrion and Griffin have told me about you, my grandfather said, tone flat, impossible to read. Building a frozen wasteland into something real in just a few months, raising a knight order of considerable scale. You've done well enough. The Duke is too kind. It was only possible through family support and the dedication of my soldiers. I claim no special credit. Young, but you know how to talk. Andre cut in, voice hard as clashing metal. But the battlefield doesn't care about smooth words. Your knight order, small in number, but the composition is remarkable. 100 silver, 10 gold peak, 10 earth knights. For a barony, that's blinding. His stare cut into me like a blade. Tell me, Ron Windsor, you brought a force like that to a fortress that's about to become a meat grinder. Why? To polish your reputation? To make a name? Or are you actually ready to leave your bones in this frozen ground? The question hit the core, raw, skeptical, a test with no hiding place. I lifted my head and met his razor gaze without flinching. Nothing in my eyes but clear resolve and burning will to fight. Lord Andre, I'm not here to polish anything. I'm not here for fame. I'm here for the honor of the Snow Wolf family. I'm here because thousands of people in my territory depend on the outcome. I'm here because as a Baron of the North, defending this kingdom's borders is my duty. And as for my bones, a cold smile touched my lips, fire blazing in my eyes. If the bones of my Kangland soldiers can become an iron wall that stops the orcs from pushing south, then I welcome it. The words rang through the empty hall. A flicker of approval, barely visible, crossed Andre's sharp eyes. He gave a small nod and said nothing more. On my grandfather's ageless face, something that might have been the faintest trace of satisfaction passed like a shadow. He rose slowly and walked to the great northern map. Starting to remind me of your father in his prime, he murmured. Then he tossed me a sealed intelligence report. Read it. The north isn't the only place where trouble is brewing. My grandfather stood by the great map, a faint warmth crossing his ancient face. Not bad. You remind me of your father Amon when he first came to the north. That same sharp edge, that same refusal to bend. Those quiet words hit me harder than any praise I had ever received. Recognition from this man, the pillar of the entire north, carried weight beyond measure. Then the warmth vanished. He picked up a letter sealed with crimson wax from his desk and flicked it toward me without looking. It cut through the air like an arrow. Catch. The north isn't the only place on fire. I snatched it from the air. It was heavy. The wax bore a skull and crossed swords. The kingdom's highest classification, A, Blood Raven Express. reserved for emergencies that threatened the nation's survival. My heart clenched. I broke the seal and read. My pupils shrank. My face went stone cold. The eastern border was under attack. The half-orc kingdom had assembled nearly 700,000 troops. Jackalmen as vanguard, wolfmen, lionmen, tigermen as the backbone, and aimed them at the Wall of Sighs. Intelligence suggested a secret pact with the orc kingdom. I sucked in a breath so sharp it hurt. 700,000 half-orcs on top of 800,000 orcs in the north. The Solaro kingdom was facing 150 million, no, 150,000, 1,500,000 hostile troops hitting from two directions at once. This arrived 2 days ago through the highest-level magic communication from the capital, my grandfather said, voice cold as ancient ice. For centuries, Solaro has grown stronger than every neighbor. The western dwarves are allies. The southern sea demons are no real threat. So who feels the blade at their neck? Who wants us destroyed most? He didn't need to answer. The orc kingdom and the half-orc court. I blurted out the question burning in my mind. But aren't they afraid the Klein kingdom and the Anter kingdom will stab them in the back while their lands are empty? Andre let out a hard, cold laugh. Stab them? Ron, you're still too young. The only reason those two human kingdoms aren't attacking us alongside the orcs is that humans and beast races can't easily share roads and borders for joint operations. Counting on our enemies to check each other? Naive. My grandfather raised his hand, silencing Andre. His voice carried the weight of someone who had watched the world's games for a lifetime. Thousands of years of continental war. Countless powers rise and fall. Why has no one ever unified everything? Not for lack of heroes. It's the law of balance. Nations can tolerate one strong power. They cannot tolerate one power strong enough to stand alone against all others. Solaro's current strength has made every neighbor lose sleep. His thin finger struck the desk with a dull thud. This is a coordinated hunt. The orc kingdom, the half-orc court, and behind them, possibly the silent approval or secret support of Klein and Anter. One goal, weaken Solaro. Break the spine of our rise. The truth hit me like lightning. Cold sweat soaked through my undershirt. I had been so focused on the orcs in front of me that I missed the web of international scheming and raw survival politics behind it all. Solaro had grown so powerful that the entire continent needed to band together just to hold us back. Think about it. The orc kingdom threw half its national strength, 800,000 warriors, just to pin down our northern forces of 700,000 plus some royal reserves. That alone showed how terrifying our kingdom's total power was. In a one-on-one war against any single neighbor, Solaro could crush them with a fraction of its military. The north was strong. Duke Raven and the Snow Wolf family were two massive pillars, but even that was just one claw of the Solaro lion. The kingdom's full war potential ran far deeper. The capital has made its decision, my grandfather announced, voice brooking no argument. Southern border, 1/3 of its elite forces redeployed east to reinforce the Wall of Sighs. Western border, 1/5 of its forces sent north to support us here at Raven. Fortress, the capital itself, the Royal Third Night Order rides north to us. The 4th, 5th, and 6th Royal Night Orders march east. I took a deep breath and swallowed the shock. The kingdom was committing to a two-front war against two major enemies at once. I looked at my grandfather, eyes sharp. Grandfather, what do you need Kanglan to do? A glint of approval crossed his eyes. My quick composure and willingness to step forward pleased him. Every major power in the kingdom, their true strength is an open book to both sides. But you, Ron Windsor, are a sudden unknown in this storm. Your speed of growth, your Night Order's power. His gaze passed over Lane standing silent behind me. A force built on silver-rank knights at minimum, with a combat density rivaling the core of your Uncle Andre's own Frost Night Order. His tone shifted to something cold and razor-edged. Right now, to fuel this invasion, the Orc Kingdom has emptied its southern territories. Their homeland must be dangerously hollow. I need a force. One that nobody knows. One sharp enough to cut deep. One that can slip past enemy eyes and strike into the Orc Kingdom's heartland. His gaze locked onto me like iron. Your mission: take your Flying Tiger Knight Order behind enemy lines. Move like the craftiest Snow Wolf. Destroy their supply lines. Burn their granaries. Cut off their weapons shipments. Raid their rear garrisons. Make their frontline army choke. Fire behind them. chaos everywhere they turn. Behind enemy lines? My heart seized. This mission was a death sentence waiting to happen. No matter how empty the Orc homeland was, there would still be garrison forces. If we ran into a Sky Knight or something worse. What? Afraid, my grandfather's voice cut cold. I snapped my head up. My eyes were heavy with the weight of it, but there was no fear in them. Grandfather, I understand the danger, but the situation behind enemy lines is unknown. If we hit a force we can't handle, he let out a low laugh, full of absolute confidence. You think I'd send you in alone to die? The room darkened for a heartbeat. A pressure crashed down from nowhere. Ancient, bottomless, like the deepest frozen core of the world had opened up. Lane and I both felt it slam into us like invisible mountains. Breathing stopped. Blood froze. Even thought slowed to a crawl. Behind my grandfather, in what had been empty shadow, space itself rippled like water. A figure condensed out of nothing. He wasn't tall. He wore a plain gray linen robe, white hair and beard, a face so ordinary he could pass for any old neighbor. But when he opened his eyes that held endless blizzards and starfields, the pressure multiplied 100-fold, 1,000 times stronger than Uncle Griffin. It felt like it could freeze souls and stop time. The air groaned. The magic runes on the walls flickered wildly. Even Andre stepped back half a pace, awe on his face. Epic rank, without question, and not freshly entered, deep into that realm. The gray-robed old man swept his calm gaze over me and Lane as if looking through our souls. He said nothing. He simply stood there and became the center of the world. This is the shadow of Frost, Yano Cold Frost. My old friend, my grandfather's voice cut through the crushing pressure. He will go with you, with him at your side. Unless the Orc Kingdom sends out the legendary rank ancient monster guarding their royal temple, or mobilizes a 10,000-strong Silver Knight order for an all-out hunt, the entire Orc heartland is your playground. No one can stop you. Looking at that gray-robed figure standing like an eternal glacier, feeling the terrifying power that could reshape the world around him, every doubt and fear inside me burned away in an instant. What replaced it was a volcanic eruption of fighting spirit and soaring ambition I had never felt before. I dropped to one knee, fist crashing against my chest, voice trembling with excitement, but hard as cut steel. Grandfather, your grandson Ron Windsor accepts the mission. The Flying Tiger Knight Order of Kanglen will become the most savage wolf pack. We will tear into the enemy's rear, burn their grain, cut their roads, turn their homeland upside down. We'll show every orc that anyone who threatens Solaro's borders will be hunted down, even in their own backyard. Good. My grandfather's sharp scrutiny transformed into open, fierce approval. Then speak now. What do you need? Once you're deep in orc territory, reinforcements won't reach you. I had already thought this through. My gaze was steady, my voice clear and strong. Grandfather, I have 3 requests. First, promote me to Viscount. Grant me legal pioneering rights over the Cross Mountains to Kanglen's west and the frozen wastes to the north. Second, after the war, fill Kanglen's population gap. I'll desperately need laborers to develop new land and build up the territory. Third, assign 200 Black Iron rank knights to reinforce my forces. Viscount, my grandfather's brow tightened. His hawk eyes locked on me. Your knight order's strength far exceeds a baron's standing. But raising your title is no small matter. Why do you need it? I met his piercing gaze, mind racing. I needed a reason this wise old man would believe. Something that explained my rapid rise without revealing the system's existence. I took a breath and decided to share a carefully shaped piece of truth. Grandfather, I won't hide this any longer. I stumbled upon an ancient knight inheritance. This inheritance gave me a secret method for rapidly training elite knights. But it's tied to rank. Only by reaching a higher title can I unlock deeper layers of the inheritance, stronger powers, better soldiers. I paused deliberately, letting the words land. This is how I built the Flying Tiger Knight Order so fast. And it's the foundation for contributing even greater strength to the family and the kingdom in the future. It was half truth, half cover. Advancing my title really would unlock new troop trees in the system, like the Kushite Khanate units waiting at the Viscount tier. That was critical for growing stronger. Framing the system as an inheritance wrapped its power in something this world would understand and accept. My grandfather's eyes went razor sharp. He said nothing for a long moment, the silence pressing down like a mountain. Then he slowly turned to the gray-robed figure, Yano Coldfrost. No words were exchanged. Yano's ancient, storm-filled eyes shifted slightly. He raised a withered palm, and from it spread a pressure so profound it felt like time and space themselves were about to freeze solid. The gray-robed old man, Yano Coldfrost, raised his withered palm and spoke in a voice that echoed like ancient glaciers shifting. I, Yano Coldfrost, swear by the name of the frost god, a soul blood oath. Everything seen, heard, and felt here today is sealed in eternal ice. Should even a whisper reach a fifth person, a drop of blood like a crimson ice diamond crystallized in his palm, glowing with holy cold light, filled with tiny frost runes swirling inside. The blood sank into his hand. A blue divine mark flashed across his forehead and disappeared beneath the skin. A bone-deep, soul-level binding force descended on the room. The temperature dropped sharply. My grandfather watched the mark fade, and the last trace of doubt left his eyes. He turned back to me, gaze burning. Good. Your requests, granted. Then his voice turned to iron. But remember your promise, Ron Windsor. If your performance behind enemy lines doesn't match this Viscount title, even if your mother Lydia kneels before me begging, I will personally strip the skin from your bones. The killing intent was real. I didn't doubt for a second he meant every word. I straightened my back, slammed my fist to my chest, and answered with absolute resolve. Grandfather, rest assured. I will hold nothing back. I will turn the Orc Kingdom's rear upside down. If I fail to satisfy you, I'll bring you my own head. Good. That's the ruthlessness I want. A flash of approval crossed his eyes. He strode to the center of the hall, reached up, and gripped the great raven sword mounted. On the wall, a blade forged from dark ice-cold iron, its guard set with a massive ice crystal glowing pale blue, the edge rippling with soul-freezing frost light. He drew it with a ringing cry like a dragon's roar. A vast, crushing aura flooded the hall, the weight of 1,000 years of northern winters compressed into one moment. Holding the sword with both hands, tip angled toward the sky, he spoke in a voice that shook the castle. By the name of the Raven, by the authority of the Guardian of the North, I declare, Baron Ron Windsor of Kanglen, in the kingdom's hour of need, accepts a deadly mission behind enemy lines. His courage deserves recognition. His resolve deserves honor. His contribution deserves reward. I grant him the title of Viscount of the Snow Eagle. His domain, all of Kanglen territory, the Cross Mountains to the west, and the frozen wastes to the north. As far as his eyes can see and his iron hooves can reach, it is his land. I grant him the Snow Eagle banner. May he soar like an eagle over the northern sky, eyes sharp, talons deadly, guarding our borders and tearing apart every enemy who dares invade. I grant him pioneering rights. After the war, the kingdom will help fill his population and build his new lands. I grant him 200 Black Iron Knights to sharpen his claws. Ron Windsor, receive your title. He flicked the sword tip, and a concentrated beam of ice-blue light shot from the blade into the hilt of my own sword at my waist. My sword hummed with a clear, ringing note. Beside the snow wolf crest, a new mark blazed to life. A snow eagle with spread wings and razor eyes, glowing faint blue. A heavier, more refined pressure radiated from the steel, the weight of a Viscount's authority. A servant rushed forward with a folded banner and unfurled it before me, the Snow Eagle war flag. On it, an eagle soared above a blizzard, talons gripping a shattered orc totem. Thank you, my lord. Viscount Ron Windsor of the Snow Eagle accepts. I knelt, took the banner in both hands, voice shaking with emotion, but filled with power and purpose I had never felt before. The instant the ceremony ended, something deep inside me cracked open. A dormant chain shattered. The system's cold, mechanical voice exploded in my soul. Title advancement, Viscount. New troop system unlocked. Khanate of Khazit. Promotion rewards issued. 10 Khan's Guard. Peak Earth Knights. Elite Steppe Warriors. 20 Keshig Riders. Gold rank mounted archers without equal. 10,000 dinars. 50,000 personal experience points. My pupils tightened. A flood of power and information crashed into my mind. I could see them. 10 warriors in ornate scale armor with eagle feather helms, carrying noble composite bows and crescent blades, fierce as steppe wolves, and 20 light armored riders with quivers on their backs, controlling horses like extensions of their own bodies, eyes sharp as hawks. They were branded into my soul, ready to answer whenever I called. This new power, cavalry from the distant grasslands, completely different from my imperial troops, was exactly what I needed for the suicide mission ahead. Andre, my grandfather's voice broke through my inner storm. He turned to his eldest son with iron command. Select 400 of the best black iron cavalry from the Frost Knight Order reserves. Horses, weapons, 10 days' rations, all equipped. Deliver them to Kanglin's camp before sundown, under Ron's command, and pull 50,000 gold coins from the treasury. Send those too. Yes, father, Andre accepted without hesitation. He understood. Those 400 riders were critical reinforcements for the strike force heading behind enemy lines. My grandfather's gaze returned to me, sharp as a blade cutting straight to whatever secrets I held. Viscount Ron of the Snow Eagle, you have 5 days. 5 days to reorganize your Flying Tiger Knight Order. Absorb Andre's 400 Black Iron Knights. Integrate your new forces and complete all preparations. His fingers stabbed the map at the vast, barren, deadly frozen wastes north of Raven Fortress. On the 5th night, when the moon is dark and the wind howls, you depart from the fortress's north gate in secret. Cross the frozen wastes. Strike deep into the Orc Kingdom's heartland. Remember, 5 days only. Whether you're fully ready or not, you move. The window of opportunity won't wait. I stood straight as a spear, hand gripping the hilt of my sword with its new Snow Eagle mark, eyes burning like molten rock. Viscount Ron Windsor of the Snow Eagle swears, by Snow Wolf blood, by the Snow Eagle name. In 5 days, my army will be ready. On the 5th night, when darkness falls, the Orc Kingdom's rear will begin to burn. I go to succeed or die. The Orc court will never know peace again. The oath rang through the solemn hall, heavy with finality and blazing resolve. Even Yano Cold Frost, silent and still as an eternal glacier, seemed to stir, the faintest ripple crossing his ancient, bottomless eyes. My grandfather looked at me for a long moment. This grandson who had transformed before his eyes into something sharp and dangerous. Finally, he spoke a single word, quiet but carrying the weight of mountains. Good. I bowed once more to my grandfather, to Uncle Andre, and to the mysterious Master Yano. Then I turned sharply, my new Snow Eagle cloak cutting an arc through the air, and strode out with Lane at my side, like an eagle diving toward its prey. The frontline battle hadn't started yet, but a far more dangerous, far more secret storm, one aimed at the very roots of the Orc Kingdom, was already gathering force. The Snow Eagle's wings were about to cast the shadow of death across the Orc sky. 5 days burned past like seconds on a blade's edge. Every moment counted. I ran like a war machine. The 400 black iron cavalry my grandfather sent were fed straight into the system's forge. 300 were reforged into Khajiit Konghari, the Khanate's base noble cavalry. They shed their old armor and emerged in tough leather-plated gear, composite bows on their backs, curved swords at their hips, eyes carrying the fierce pride of steppe nobility. Each one now held silver-rank battle aura and deadly mounted archery skills. The remaining 100 became Imperial Heavy Riders, disciplined lancers built for mass charges. Thanks to my brother Vincent's connections in Frost Valley, I got 400 sets of quality Black Iron Knight armor and weapons fast, enough to give every new rider stronger protection without losing their fighting style. The system's rewards were the real game-changer. Tin Khan's Guard, peak Earth Knights radiating steppe wolf ferocity, and 20 Keshig Scouts, gold-rank horse archers without equal. The moment they appeared, their raw power turned every head in the Flying Tiger Knight Order. The Khan's Guard especially, their aura actually overshadowed Lane's best Imperial elite armored cavalry. On the 5th night, at the frozen edge of the wastes north of Raven Fortress, I sat on my black warhorse in silver-gray Lord's armor under my new Snow Eagle cloak, looking over my transformed army. On my left, Lane Astartes, dark abyss armor, silent as a steel mountain. On my right, Zakin, captain of the Khan's Guard, lean as a hunting cat in ornate scale armor, eagle feather helm, jeweled steel saber at his hip, massive recurve composite bow across his back, peak. Earth Knight aura rolling off him like a steppe storm. Behind Zakin stood the 10 Khan's guard on tall, armored horses, crescent moon blades resting at their saddles, noble shortbows ready on the other side. Their eyes swept the dead wasteland like circling hawks. Nothing escaped their notice. A Keshig scout materialized from the snow like a ghost, dismounted without a sound, and pressed his fist to his chest in the Khajiit salute. My Khan, the Frost Wolf path is clear for 30 li ahead. No orc patrols. Snow is firm enough for fast riding. The Frost Wolf path, a hidden route Uncle Griffin had carved years ago when he raided deep into orc territory. It bypassed the enemy's main defense line and drove straight into their heartland like a knife. Target, the Frost Wolf path. All forces, move out. Over 500 riders launched forward in perfect unison, yet eerily silent. The Khajiit riders knew snow like they were born in it. Hooves wrapped in special felt, horses stepping light across deep drifts without a sound. The Imperial riders and flying tiger knights followed in the tracks ahead, keeping noise to a minimum. The whole column moved like a soundless wind of death sweeping across the frozen wastes. Hundreds of ghost shadows melting into the dark forest of twisted, ice-coated trees. Zakin rode just ahead of me like the lead wolf of a pack, his hawk eyes somehow seeing through the blizzard, issuing silent hand signals that made the Konghari shift formation without a word. Lane guarded my other flank, his senses spread like an invisible net across the rear, catching any threat that tried to follow. The 10 Khan's guard spread across key points in the column, crescent blades glinting cold in the darkness. 2 full days and nights we pushed through that hellish path, eating frozen rations, drinking melted snow, enduring bone-cutting cold, but maintaining iron discipline and total silence the entire time. The rugged terrain of the Frost Wolf path was our best shield. Not a single orc patrol or checkpoint along the border detected us slipping past their heavily fortified front line. On the 3rd morning, gray dawn barely breaking through thick clouds, Zakin guided me up a low snow-covered ridge. The view opened wide. No more dead frozen wasteland. Below us stretched rolling hills blanketed in snow. In the distance, thin columns of smoke rose from scattered villages. Further out, a wide road scarred with deep wagon ruts cut across the white landscape like an ugly wound, heading north. The Orc Kingdom's southern interior. We were in. My Khan, Zakin said quietly, a hint of excitement in his low voice. He pointed at the road. The Beast Blood Road. The main artery connecting the Orc court to their southern border. Normally packed with supply convoys, grain, weapons, troops, I squinted at the road. It was nearly deserted. A few broken-down beast carts crawled along, pulled by scrawny goblins and worn-out orc laborers. The handful of guards were poorly equipped and half asleep. Uncle Griffin's intelligence was right, I said, voice cold as frost. They really did empty everything for the invasion. They can barely keep their own supply lines running. I scanned the villages. No sign of any organized orc military presence. Just flimsy wooden fences, no real defenses. The strong orcs had been drafted. Only the old, the women, the children, and slaves remained. Empty, completely hollow. The realization sent war fires surging through my veins. This was the battlefield we had dreamed of. Zakin, my Khan, send your best Keshig. Groups of 3. Fan out. Map everything within 50 li, every orc village, granary, outpost, and most importantly, their military supply transfer stations. I want full details, troop numbers, defense strength, patrol routes, shift schedules. Miss nothing. Yes, my Khan, Zakin's eyes blazed. He turned and whispered orders to his sharpest scouts. Within moments, several shadows slipped down the ridge like snow foxes and vanished into the white expanse. I looked back at the Beast Blood Road, and a cold, hungry smile crossed my face. Lane, my lord, order the entire force, conceal positions, rest in place, maintain highest alert. When the intelligence comes back, my voice cracked like breaking ice, sharp with killing intent. That's when the Snow Eagle feeds. I'm going to turn that Beast Blood Road into a road that truly runs with blood. In the bitter wind, over 500 pairs of eyes gleamed from the snow like wolves lying in wait, cold, patient, starving. The Orc Kingdom's vast, unguarded rear had become our hunting ground. The Snow Eagle's talons were about to draw their first orc blood. The shadow of death had officially fallen over the Orc south, while my Snow Eagle force slipped like ghosts into the Orc kingdom's southern interior. The storm finally broke at Raven Fortress. I wasn't there to see it, but the reports that reached me later painted a picture of absolute hell. War drums erupted from the Orc camps, deep, endless booming that shook the earth like the planet itself was screaming. Then came the war cry. Hundreds of thousands of Orc throats roaring at once, a sound like a tidal wave crashing against the dark obsidian walls of the fortress. The stone itself trembled. The first wave was expendable, Orc slaves and laborers driven forward like cattle into the teeth of the fortress defenses. Arrows, stones, and boiling oil rained down from the walls. Bodies piled up, but they kept coming. Then the real horror began. Deep in the Orc camp, dozens of blood shamans in tattered crimson robes gathered around an altar built from giant bones and severed heads. They chanted in piercing, inhuman shrieks, waving staffs set with blood-red gems. At the altar's center, a whirlpool of boiling dark blood spun violently, filled with the screaming faces of tortured souls. A massive column of dark red blood energy erupted from the altar and punched straight into the sky, turning the gray clouds into a ceiling of blood. From that pillar, countless threads of blood energy shot outward and poured into the charging Orc warriors below. The Blood Rage Totem, forbidden shaman magic. It burned slave souls and gallons of blood to force warriors into a berserk state. Strength and speed exploded. Pain vanished. The cost was their own life force burning away. But in the moment, they became monsters. Their eyes turned solid red. Muscles swelled grotesquely, veins bulging like snakes across their skin, strange blood-colored patterns crawling over their flesh. They stopped feeling arrows, stopped feeling boulders, stopped feeling boiling liquid. They climbed the siege ladders at triple speed, hit the walls with devastating force. The defense line buckled. Pressure on the garrison multiplied overnight. But Duke Creel was ready. From the command tower, my grandfather slammed his foot down and gave the order. Activate the Breath of Winter. Across the fortress, over a dozen towering mage spires lit up at once. Massive ice crystals at their peaks blazed with blinding blue light. A vast, bone-freezing magical power gathered above the fortress like a frozen god descending. The Frost Mage Corps commander, Alina Frostwhisper, a powerful ice archmage, began her incantation from the highest tower. The spires linked together, and a colossal magic formation made of countless frost runes spread across the sky like an inverted bowl, covering the entire fortress and the battlefield beyond. The Breath of Winter, Raven Fortress's ultimate defensive spell. The temperature plunged below anything natural. Razor winds made of pure cold materialized from nothing. The ground froze into solid ice sheets. Charging Orcs stuttered mid-step. Even the blood rage energy coursing through their veins slowed and thickened under the supernatural cold. Frost Mage Corps, target the blood altar. Alina's voice rang like shattering ice crystals. Blizzard Storm, absolute zero rays. Ice crystal barriers. Spells streaked from the tower tops like frozen meteors. A massive storm of razor ice blades howled toward the blood altar, freezing everything in its path. Concentrated blue beams of absolute zero energy lanced toward the chanting shamans with surgical precision. Walls of solid ice crystal erupted along the most threatened sections of the fortress walls, blocking the berserkers' maddened charges. The one-eyed elder shaman snarled in contempt. Parlor tricks! Blood soul shields, enormous walls of boiling blood and shrieking souls, rose from the altar pool to meet the ice storms. Ice blades hit blood barriers with hissing, corroding explosions and howling spirits. Foul arrows of corrupted blood launched skyward to intercept the freeze beams, detonating in chaotic bursts of fire and ice. A second pulse of blood rage energy blasted outward from the altar, fighting back the Breath of Winter's suppression and driving the berserk Orcs even harder. The sky became a war between two forces of nature. Ice blue and blood-red magic clashed like dragons, tearing and devouring each other. Blizzards met blood shields in deafening explosions, spraying ice shards and blood rain across the battlefield. Freeze beams and blood arrows annihilated each other midair in chaotic energy bursts. Ice barriers cracked under berserk fists and corrosive blood auras. Defenders fought desperately behind the crumbling walls, stabbing and slashing at every orc that scrambled over the top. The entire battlefield became a furnace of ice and blood. On one side, absolute cold, freezing everything, holding the human defense line together. On the other, boiling blood, burning lives, fueling the orc frenzy. The energy storms from the magical clash swept the battlefield wild, ripping up frozen earth and twisting the air itself. Ordinary soldiers couldn't go near the impact zones without being torn apart by stray power. Raven Fortress stood like a rock in a raging sea, battered but unbroken. The clash between the Frost Mage core and the Blood Shaman circle became the deadliest, most terrifying core of the entire battle. A magical hurricane where every second decided thousands of lives. While we hid deep in the Orc Kingdom's south, the battle at Raven Fortress had erupted into full-scale war. I learned the details later, and they were horrifying. The Orc army attacked with everything. War drums shook the earth. Hundreds of thousands of throats screamed a battle cry that hit the obsidian walls like a tidal wave. The first wave was slaves and laborers, thrown at the walls as meat shields while arrows and stones rained down. Then the Blood Shamans activated their forbidden magic. Dozens of them gathered around a bone altar swimming with boiling blood and tortured souls. A pillar of dark red energy shot into the sky, turning the clouds crimson. Blood energy threads poured into the charging orc warriors, transforming them into mindless berserkers. Eyes solid red, muscles swollen grotesquely, completely immune to pain. They climbed the walls at terrifying speed. My grandfather answered with the fortress's ultimate defense. The breath of winter. Over a dozen mage towers linked together, creating a massive frost formation that covered the entire battlefield. Temperatures plunged to impossible lows. The Ice Mage commander Elina Frostwhisper directed blizzard storms, frost novas, and freeze beams at the blood altar, while ice crystal barriers rose along the crumbling wall sections. The shamans fought back with blood soul shields, corrupted blood arrows, and intensified rage auras. The sky became a battlefield of its own, ice blue and blood-red magic tearing into each other like ancient beasts, every collision sending shockwaves that ripped the frozen ground apart. On the walls, silver and gold rank warriors pushed their battle aura to the limit, cutting down berserkers who scrambled over the top. But the blood-enhanced orcs hit back just as hard, swinging massive axes wreathed in crimson energy that could shatter multiple aura strikes at once. Then a sky-rank orc berserker charged, over 3 meters tall, covered in black iron heavy armor, wielding twin battle axes, burning with blood rage aura so thick it was visible. He launched himself at the weakest section of wall like a cannonball. Uncle Andre met him in the air. Andre erupted from the wall in a streak of silver light, clad in mithril frost rune armor, wielding an ice-blue knight's longsword. He called his technique Frost Judgment, and a colossal ice-blue aura blade screamed downward. The orc berserker crossed his axes and launched twin blood-red energy waterfalls upward. The collision between two sky-rank fighters was beyond anything else on the battlefield. Blinding light, a shockwave that cracked the ice barriers and knocked soldiers flat in every direction. For one heartbeat they were locked. Then Andre's blade surged brighter. He poured everything into it. The blood aura shattered. The orc spat a torrent of blood, his armor ripped open to the bone, and his massive body flew backward like a broken kite, crashing into his own army. Andre hung in the air, frost aura billowing behind him like a cape, eyes cold as death looking down on the orc host. The retreat horn sounded. The shamans pulled back their magic. The blood pillar faded. The berserk orcs deflated instantly, staggering back in exhaustion. They withdrew like a receding tide, leaving behind a field of carnage. One day of fighting. Over 6,000 orc dead. Over 4,000 human casualties, mostly frontline infantry and archers. More than 10,000 lives erased from the world in a single day on that frozen plain. My grandfather stood on the command tower, looking down at what could only be called hell. He knew this was just the beginning. The orcs hadn't committed their true elites yet. The shaman circle was still intact. There were more sky-rank fighters waiting. He issued orders: clean the battlefield, treat the wounded, repair walls, recharge the mage towers, rotate the night orders. The next wave would come. and my mission behind enemy lines had just become more critical than ever. Far to the south, in a hidden valley buried under snow, I sat on a cold rock with my snow eagle cloak snapping in the wind. A rough leather map was spread before me. Lane stood behind me like a steel statue. The Tin Khan's guard perched on the high ground around the valley, crescent blades ready, hawk eyes scanning for any movement. Faint hoofbeats approached. 3 Keshig scouts materialized from the snow like ghosts and dismounted without a sound. The lead scout pressed his fist to his chest. "My Khan. 3rd Squad. Mission complete. Report." He spoke fast and precise, wasting nothing. Villages and small outposts. 7 orc villages within 50 li, all along the Beast Blood Road or near water sources. Defenses are practically non-existent. Fewer than 100 old or weak orcs and goblin slaves guarding each one. Weapons are bone clubs and stone axes. Wooden fences, nothing more. Almost every able-bodied orc has been drafted. Only elderly, women, children, and slaves remain. Each village has a small granary, dried grain, and jerky. Not much individually, but it adds up. Guards are careless. Military supply transfer station. 20 li upstream from where the Beast Blood Road crosses the Blackstone River. 1 major depot, codenamed Blood Howl. Massive, roughly 100 acres. Walls of logs and boulders, but damaged in multiple spots and never repaired. Garrison, about 300 total. 150 orc soldiers, mostly black iron rank, a few bronze. 150 goblin laborers and slaves. Standard chainmail and curved swords. Morale is low. Patrols are lazy. Defenses, 2 crude arrow towers. No magical protection detected. Multiple gaps in the walls. Easy entry points. Supplies piled high as mountains. Dozens of grain stacks. Weapons and armor crates heaped like hills. Countless bundles of arrows. Large quantities of unassembled siege equipment. Ladders and battering rams sitting in the open. Hundreds of cold-resistant pack beasts pinned in livestock corrals. 3 to 5 supply convoys arrive or depart daily. 50 to 100 beast carts each. Guards are thin, mostly goblin drivers with a handful of orc overseers. I stared at the map, processing every detail. My eyes narrowed. The orc kingdom really had emptied itself for this invasion. Their rear was a hollow shell, undermanned, under-equipped, underguarded. This wasn't just an opportunity. This was a feast laid out on an open table, waiting for the wolves. The scout finished his report. The nearest real orc garrison, Blackstone Fort, about 70 li northwest, had roughly 1,000 bronze-rank soldiers with a suspected silver-rank commander. Slow to respond. Half a day minimum to send reinforcements. No flying beasts. No shamans. No unusual magic in the sky. His 2 companions marked every detail on my leather map. Villages, the transfer station, patrol routes, Blackstone Fort's position. I studied the map, my gaze cutting across each point like a frozen blade, finally locking onto the circled target, the Blood Howl supply depot. Grain, weapons, siege equipment. I murmured each word like dropping ice. One of the lifelines feeding 800,000 orcs on the front. And it's practically unguarded. I stood. My snow eagle cloak snapped in the wind. Killing intent poured off me like an unsheathed sword. Lane, my lord. Orders. Keshig, 20 riders, for groups of 5. Targets, the 7 villages. Mission, silent elimination of all guards. Burn every granary. Scatter the slaves. Spread panic. Move fast, stay hidden, hit, and vanish. No lingering. Konghari, 300 riders under Zakin. Target, Bloodhowl's outer perimeter. Mission, destroy patrols, seal all roads, intercept anyone trying to escape or send word. I want Bloodhowl completely isolated. Imperial Heavy Riders, 100, under your direct command. Target, Bloodhowl's front gate. Mission, smash through the defenses. Crush the garrison with your iron hooves. Flying Tiger Knight Order, 100 Silver Knights, with me. Target, Bloodhowl's core. Mission, destroy everything. Grain, weapons, siege parts, pack animals. I want nothing left. Scorched Earth, Khan's Guard, 10 riders at my flanks. Security and support. Any strong enemy that steps forward, kill without mercy. I drew my Snow Eagle sword and pointed it at the map. Target, Bloodhowl. All forces move now. Tonight, I turned their blood howl into a death bell ringing across their entire rear. The hunt begins. 500 pairs of eyes gleamed in the dark like starving wolves. The shadow of death fell over the orcs south. The 7 villages along the Beast Blood Road were asleep in darkness. Flimsy wooden fences. A few crumbling watchtowers manned by old, shivering orc guards wrapped in rags, eyes dull and empty. Most houses dark. A handful of fires where elderly orcs, women, children, and goblin slaves huddled under animal skins. The air stank of livestock dung and quiet despair. Bloodclaw Village. First target. An old orc soldier dozed on the watchtower, clutching his spear. His cloudy eyes snapped open. He heard something. Not wind. Something like the faintest hiss of arrows cutting air. He opened his mouth to shout. 3 black arrows, almost invisible against the night, punched through his throat, his heart, and between his eyes before he made a sound. His body slumped without a whisper. 5 Keshig shadows materialized around the village perimeter like ghosts. Composite bows gleamed cold under pale moonlight. Arrows poured in like silent rain. Every target that could raise an alarm, patrolling goblins, orcs outside their huts, even guard dogs, went down in seconds. Screams started and died just as fast, each one cut short by another precise shaft. The Keshig moved through the village like death itself, flowing between shadows, bowstrings singing their quiet song. A stocky orc warrior burst from a stone hut with a bone club, saw his dead comrade on the tower, and froze. 3 arrows hit his chest, throat, and face simultaneously. He crashed to the ground, eyes wide with shock he would carry forever. It was slaughter. Silent, efficient, total. An old orc woman saw her grandson shot through the head as he ran outside. She screamed, a sound torn from the deepest part of her, and charged at the nearest Keshig with bare, bony hands. An arrow pierced her heart. The screaming stopped. A one-armed orc veteran, a former warrior reduced to watching his people die, grabbed a rusted cleaver and charged with a roar of defiance. 2 arrows shattered his knees. He collapsed screaming. A third went through his skull. The village became hell. Any fire that flickered was snuffed by arrows. Desperate wails, furious curses, dying groans tangled together in the freezing night wind. The villagers couldn't even see their killers, just cold flashes of death from the darkness. Area clear. Granary located. Human slaves found in the labor pen. The Keshig converged on the central granary, a rough log structure packed with moldy grain and dried meat. Oil jars shattered against the walls. Torches flew. The granary erupted in roaring orange flame, devouring wood and food in seconds. Thick smoke billowed into the sky. Firelight turned the village bright as noon and lit up the Keshig's expressionless faces. Withdraw. 5 shadows melted back into the night as silently as they had come, leaving behind a sea of fire and the echoes of hopeless screaming. They were already riding toward the next village. The same scene played out across all 7 targets almost simultaneously. In less than half an hour, the Keshig turned 7 villages into burning graves. Every guard and every orc who tried to fight back was cut down by precise arrows. Granaries blazed. Smoke columns rose into the dark sky. Panic spread along the Beast Blood Road like a plague. Outside the Blood Howl Depot, Zakin's 300 Konghari riders waited in the snow like a silent wolf pack, eyes locked on the road. A patrol wandered past, 5 goblin riders and 2 lazy orc overseers, cursing the cold, completely blind to the death hiding in the dark. Targets confirmed. 300 steps. No threat. Free hunt. Dozens of arrows erupted from the darkness. The patrol was shredded before anyone could finish a scream. Bodies and mounts collapsed into the snow, blood freezing instantly. Clear the traces. Hold positions. Zakin's voice was flat as stone. Every road leading to Bloodhowl was sealed. The depot was an island now. Inside the depot, the garrison still hadn't noticed. Sentries yawned on the arrow towers. Orc soldiers huddled around campfires complaining about the cold. Goblin slaves shuffled under the whip, moving crates with dead eyes. Then the earth shook. Thunder, hoofbeats, rolling closer at terrifying speed. Attack! Attack! A sentry finally screamed from the tower. Too late. The main gate, heavy logs and boulders, cracked and half repaired, exploded inward in a storm of splinters. 100 Imperial heavy riders in chain armor with leveled lances poured through behind Lane Astartes like a steel flood. Lane's massive two-handed battle axe swept out, battle aura tearing the air apart, splitting two orc defenders clean in half. Armor, flesh, everything. Blood and guts sprayed across the ground. The riders drove their lances into the scrambling orc defenders, punching through leather armor and bodies like paper. Heavy hooves trampled anyone who fell. The hasty defensive line shattered on contact. Screams, cracking bones, and clashing steel filled the night. Shoot! Shoot them! Orc archers on the towers fired downward in panic. Before their arrows reached the ground, a storm of far deadlier shafts screamed in from outside the walls. Konghari archers had opened up. Tower guards dropped like cut wheat. Wall defenders scattered, pinned under the rain of precise fire. Total chaos. Then my voice cut through it all. With me? Charge! I rode at the front in my silver-gray lord's armor, the snow wolf crest on my shoulders blazing in the firelight, snow eagle cloak whipping behind me, silver battle aura burning along my sword blade. 100 silver-rank flying tiger knights surged behind me like a drawn sword. 10 Khan's guard flanked me like shadow sentinels. This force, my personal strike team for the deep raid, I had named Snow Wolf's Fawn. The Snow Eagle was the banner of Kanglin. But my root, my soul, would always belong to the Snow Wolf family. We drove straight for the depot's heart, the mountains of grain, the weapon crates, the siege equipment, the livestock pens. Target, grain stores. Fire oil. Now, knights carrying special fire oil bombs lit and hurled ceramic jars at the nearest grain stacks. The flames leapt skyward instantly. Dry grain and straw burned like they were made for it. Fire spread in seconds. Target, weapons and armor. Battle aura strikes. Destroy. I swung my sword and sent a silver aura slash screaming into a stack of neatly packed weapon crates. Wood exploded. Blades and spears scattered everywhere like shrapnel. My knights followed, aura flashes lighting up the night as they tore through crate after crate, turning carefully forged equipment into scrap metal in moments. Target, siege equipment. Priority destruction. I locked eyes on the massive ladder frames and battering ram skeletons. Zakin barked an order. One of the Khan's guard charged forward, his 2-meter crescent blade howling through the air and cleaving through a siege ladder's main beam, wood thick as a man's waist, like it was rotten kindling. The whole structure collapsed with a crash. The rest joined in. Aura strikes and heavy weapons tore the siege machines apart like toys. Equipment that had cost the orcs a fortune was reduced to splinters in minutes. Target, pack animals. Scatter and kill. I gave the order without hesitation. These beasts could be recaptured and used again. Arrows and aura blasts rained into the livestock pens. Hundreds of transport animals screamed in terror. Some were killed outright. Others stampeded through broken fences, crashing through the camp and adding to the pandemonium. Bloodhowl became a furnace of fire and death. Flames painted half the sky red. Smoke billowed in thick columns. Screaming, explosions, crackling fire, snapping timber, shrieking animals. It all merged into one roaring symphony of destruction. Then Zakin rode up beside me, his voice carrying something different. My lord, he pointed toward a corner of the depot, a section fenced off with heavy wooden barriers and extra guards. Low shacks huddled there. In the firelight, I could see dozens of ragged, skeletal figures crouching together, shaking with terror. Most of them were human. Men, women, children. Chains on their wrists and ankles. Whip scars across their skin. Human slaves, my lord. A large number. Looks like they were captured from the border. Zakin's voice was steady but heavy. I swept my gaze across those huddled figures, helpless and terrified in the firelight. Children with wide, frozen eyes. Women weeping silently. Men with dead stares hiding a flicker of bitter rage beneath the numbness. Chains. Whip scars. Frostbite. Unexpected bonus, I said, a cold edge in my voice. Lane, send a squad. Secure those slaves. Don't let them scatter, and don't let any orc kill them in desperation. They may be useful. Lane split off a team of heavy riders to lock down the slave area immediately. I turned away from them and looked out at the inferno. The massive depot reduced to burning wreckage. Orc defenders hunted down across the grounds. Distant villages glowing red on the horizon with faint screams drifting on the wind. Zakin, signal all Keshik teams. Mission complete. Rally at the extraction point. He pulled a bone whistle from his coat and blew 3 sharp bursts, like a night owl's cry, cutting through the chaos of the battlefield. Answering whistles came back from different directions. Withdraw. I turned my horse. The snow eagle cloak snapped in the light of the towering flames behind me. I gave one last look at the burning ruins and the human slaves being herded to safety, eyes holding nothing but cold purpose. Snowwolf's Fong has swallowed its first meal. Now, where's the next one? A cruel smile crossed my face as I led my ghost army back into the darkness and wind. Behind us we left a sea of fire, a field of corpses, columns of smoke reaching the sky, and a wave of terror spreading across the Orc Kingdom's southern heartland. Like a plague. Later, deep in a hidden valley buried under snow, the rescued slaves, nearly 200 of them, huddled in crude shelters thrown together against the wind. They shivered in rags, skins stretched over bone, covered in whip marks and frostbite. Their eyes were hollow with exhaustion and despair. Many still wore heavy shackles, the iron chains clinking softly in the cold. Children pressed into their mothers. Men stared at the ground, souls emptied by everything the orcs had done to them. They had been dragged from their homes, driven like livestock, beaten and worked until they expected to die in chains. Then a mysterious army had appeared from nowhere and torn their captors apart. But freedom hadn't brought joy, only confusion and fear. They didn't know who we were, where we were taking them, or what came next. I stood on a raised rock above them, snow eagle cloak whipping in the wind, snow wolf armor glinting cold in the pale light. I looked down at this flock of broken, terrified people with sharp, calculating eyes. Lane stood behind me like an iron tower. The Tin Khan's guard held the valley entrances like boulders. Zakin had the Konghari patrolling the wider perimeter. Zakin rode up to give his report, voice low. Initial count complete. 187 slaves total. He paused, a slight shift in his tone. 30 of them show black iron level battle aura or magical potential. 23 lean toward agility and ranged ability, suited for the Khajiit-mounted archer path. 7 lean toward strength and defense, suited for the Imperial heavy cavalry path. The rest are elderly, women, children, or ordinary adults with no combat foundation. 30 black iron level fighters among the slaves. My eyes lit up. To survive an orc labor camp and still hold on to their battle aura meant these people had real talent and willpower. With the right transformation, they could fight immediately. Remove all chains. Hand out food and warm clothing. Women, children, and elderly first. Lane dismounted and started breaking shackles with raw strength and aura strikes. Soldiers passed out rations and thick blankets. The first warmth and food these people had tasted in who knows how long brought a faint spark back into their dead eyes. I turned my attention to the 30 with potential. Mostly younger men, gaunt but still carrying a stubborn fire deep in their stares. You? Look at me. 30 heads snapped up. Tell me your names. What you were. And your hatred. Silence. Then it broke open. A scarred young man stepped forward, voice raw with poison. Bach. Blackstone Town Militia. My parents and sister. Orcs killed them all. I want to eat their flesh. A lean, sharp-eyed hunter followed. Iwan. My village was burned. Wife and child gone. I want revenge. A thick-armed man growled. Raymond. Blacksmith's apprentice. My master had his skull crushed protecting us. I'll pay them back in blood. A pale young woman spoke last, voice trembling but iron underneath. Lena. Junior water mage. My teacher drained dry by an orc shaman so we could escape. I will get stronger. I will kill every one of those animals. Name after name. Story after story. Blood and tears woven with hatred so deep it could burn through stone. 30 voices that started as shaking whispers built into a compressed roar, a volcano seconds from erupting. Their eyes blazed with vengeance. The numbness was gone. The despair was gone. Only fire remained. Good. My voice cracked through the valley like thunder. I drew my snow eagle sword and thrust it skyward, letting my aura explode outward. Your hatred. I heard it. Your tears. I saw them. Your families will not have died for nothing. I am Ron Windsor, son of the Snow Wolf family, Viscount of the Snow Eagle, Lord of Kanglan. And I'm giving you one chance. A chance to take revenge with your own hands. A chance to wash away your shame in orc blood. a chance to reclaim your strength and your dignity. My words hit them like hammer blows. Eyes went wide. Breathing turned heavy. But my voice dropped to cold iron. This chance is only for those who deserve it. Only for those who can pick up a weapon and strike a killing blow. I swept my gaze across 30 pairs of burning eyes. Will you take up my sword? Become my warriors? Ride with me deep into orc territory and use their skulls and blood to honor your dead? Yes. 30 voices erupted at once. Hoarse, raw, absolute. The fire of revenge had consumed them completely. Good. I sheathed my sword and sank my mind into the system. 23 for the Khajiit mounted archer path. Convert to Khajiit noble sons. 7 for the Imperial heavy cavalry path. Convert to Imperial citizen cavalry. Spend the dinars. Transform. The system confirmed. Energy exploded outward from me in an invisible wave. The wind and snow in the valley seemed to freeze for a heartbeat. All 30 slaves jolted as if struck by lightning. A warm, overwhelming power flooded into their bodies. Gasps and shouts filled the air. What is this? My body. It's burning. Light bloomed across their skin. The 23 archer candidates, including Lena the mage, were wrapped in pale green wind energy. Their muscles reshaped into lean, balanced forms. Their eyes sharpened to hawk-like precision. Knowledge poured into their minds. Mounted archery, horse control, composite bow technique, step tracking, as natural as breathing. The 7 heavy cavalry candidates glowed with earthy golden light. Muscles swelled and hardened. Bones cracked and thickened. A deep, steady power settled into their frames. Their minds filled with lance charges, shield work, formation tactics, solid and instinctive. Their rags disintegrated under the energy. New equipment materialized from nothing. The Khajiit noble sons now wore tough leather-plated armor with composite bows, quivers, and curved swords. The Imperial citizen cavalry stood in solid chain armor with heavy lances and kite shields. The light faded. 30 completely reborn warriors stood where broken slaves had been moments ago. Wounds healed. Exhaustion erased. Replaced by full strength, condensed black iron aura, razor-sharp eyes, and the roaring fire of revenge burning hotter than ever. They felt the power surging inside them, the combat skills etched into their minds, and disbelief mixed with wild joy on their faces. Then, as one, they dropped to one knee, fists crashing against their chests, voices ringing through the valley. Khajiit noble sons, Imperial citizen cavalry, greet our Lord. We will die for you. We will wash our shame in orc blood. We will have our revenge. The other slaves stared in stunned silence. People who had been chained and starving beside them just moments ago now stood armed, armored, and radiating dangerous power. The numbness in their eyes cracked, replaced by shock, envy, and for the first time in a long while, a tiny, fragile flame of hope. I looked at my 30 new soldiers and felt a cold smile form. This wasn't just a welcome addition of fighters. This was proof of something bigger. Proof that my strategy of fighting behind enemy lines and growing stronger from the war itself had limitless potential. Proof that I could turn the Orc Kingdom's own backyard into a forge, and from it, hammer new blades for my army. The Orc Rear wasn't just a hunting ground. It was my workshop. My lord, Zakin's voice cut through my thoughts, barely containing his excitement. When we cleared the Bloodhowl Depot's core warehouse, we found a hidden compartment. And inside, this, 2 Konghari riders stepped forward carrying a heavy wooden chest reinforced with cold iron bands. Dusty beast hide covered the surface, but the lock fittings gleamed with dull gold. Open it. The lock snapped under brute force. The lid flew up. Golden light flooded the dim forest like a small sun had been cracked open. The chest was packed tight with gold coins, each one the size of a baby's fist, stamped with snarling orc totems. The thick, intoxicating glow of pure wealth poured out. Even I couldn't help drawing a sharp breath. Behind me, Lane's eyes contracted behind his visor. Initial count, Zakin said, struggling to keep his voice level. 10 chests like this in the hidden vault. Roughly 10,000 coins per chest. Total, 100,000 gold dragons. My heart slammed. 100,000. My entire Kanglan territory might not generate that much in a year of taxes. This sum could fund a small army for 12 months. Wages, equipment, everything. The shock lasted half a second before blazing excitement took over. I stepped forward, scooped up a handful of cold, heavy coins, and let them waterfall through my fingers, golden light streaming between them. So this is the blood reward. The orc court's payment meant to reach the front lines, to motivate their warriors and celebrate victories. I smiled, cold and amused. What a shame. Their brave soldiers at the front will never see a single coin. I laughed, deep, genuine, triumphant. Everything the orcs scraped together, handed to us on a plate. The finest joke fate ever told. Zakin and Lane couldn't help grinning too. This wasn't just money. It was proof that our mission behind enemy lines was paying off beyond anything we had imagined. I pulled the gold into the system's storage space. All 10 chests vanished in an instant, leaving only a faint metallic scent in the air. My system panel now showed 100,000 dinars. The number burned bright. And then the real understanding hit me. One supply depot. Just one. 100,000 gold. How many depots like Bloodhowl were scattered across the Orc South? How many granaries, armories, and hidden treasure vaults waited out there, barely guarded, stuffed with wealth the Orc court had funneled toward the front? This wasn't a crisis. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. Yes, we were deep behind enemy lines. Yes, we were surrounded by hostile territory. But the Orc main force had marched south to the front. What was left behind? Old soldiers, weak garrisons, goblin slaves, crumbling defenses, slow communications. No real resistance anywhere. This entire southern region wasn't a danger zone. It was an unguarded vault, a hunting ground built just for me. With 100,000 gold in hand, 30 freshly converted fighters, and my elite strike force. If I moved fast enough, hit hard enough, stayed hidden, I could use captured gold to convert and arm more soldiers on the spot. I could turn the orcs' own resources into the blade that would gut them from behind. I could build a knight order right here in enemy territory. Every soldier at least black iron rank, system forged, loyal to me. A force that could match or surpass a viscount's or even an earl's main army. Zakin, Lane, I spun around, voice cutting like a blade, burning with ambition. Order the entire force. Rest period is over. Keshig, scatter like hawks leaving the nest. Push north. Comb everything. Every orc village, checkpoint, outpost, granary, armory. I don't care if it's a latrine. Mark it all. I want the map of the orc south carved into your skulls and laid out on the snow. Target, the next Bloodhowl. The next gold vault. The next piece of fat meat to feed this blade of ours. I pulled the reins tight. My warhorse screamed. The snow eagle cloak whipped like a war flag in the howling wind, framing the twin fires of ambition and ice burning in my eyes. Remember this. My voice boomed across the ranks like a war drum. From this moment, the Orc Kingdom's south belongs to us. Their gold is our wages. Their grain is our supply. Their weapons are our claws. Even their people, I glanced at. The 30 new warriors with vengeance blazing in their eyes. Become the fuel and the anvil on which we forge new blades. Move out. A suppressed, feral roar answered me from every throat. The Keshig scattered into the snow-choked forest like arrows fired in every direction, silent, lethal. The Konghari followed like a wolf pack, hoofprints stamping clean and deadly into the white ground. The Imperial Heavy Riders and Flying Tiger Knights closed around me, a slow-drawn sword glinting with frost. I sat tall in the saddle, looking north toward the deeper orc heartland hidden under gray clouds, and let the coldest smile I had ever worn settle onto my face. This ghost army I had built and led behind enemy lines had torn the first wound, tasted hot blood, and found gleaming treasure inside. Its fangs were now coated in ice. Its hunger had become a firestorm. The Orc Kingdom's vast, sleeping south was about to learn what it meant to be hunted.